Chapter 1097. Swoosh. At that moment the maid came back. Gentlemen, please follow me to the 5 Elements Mountain. The last test will be carried out in the mountain. The 5 Elements Mountain was the colorful mountain that caused the 5 Elements divine prison to vibrate slightly. Standing at the foot of the mountain, the reaction of the 5 Elements divine prison was more intense. If Suyu hadn't put it into the 9 jade spiritual pearl in time, it might have flown out of his sleeve. The third test is to climb a mountain. This time it's really climbing a mountain. The girl blinked playfully. If you can climb to the top of the mountain, you can meet the lady. Who will be chosen by the lady in the end depends on whether you can please her. Looking up at the 5 Elements Mountain, Suyu stepped up the mountain with curiosity. When the soles of his feet touched the 5 Elements Mountain, Suyu felt his body become a little heavier. Then, he climbed up as if nothing had happened. Among the 4 people, Lu Chen was the only one who was fine. He just frowned and climbed up as if nothing had happened. But the faces of the other 3 people changed. When they stepped on the 5 Elements Mountain, they felt their bodies become 10 times heavier and it was extremely difficult to walk. Moreover, there was a prohibition on the 5 Elements Mountain. They couldn't fly, so they could only climb the mountain on foot. After a few steps, the 3 of them felt it was difficult to walk, and their foreheads were full of sweat. Zheng Quan said with difficulty, "This mountain is strange. It seems that one needs to cultivate the strength of 5 elements to climb it." Wang Shua's face gradually turned pale. He nodded and smiled bitterly. Moreover, it is very likely that one needs to cultivate the strength of 5 elements to the middle stage, or at the level of all creations. Alas, it seems that only Lu Chen can win. We are all supporting characters. Zheng Quan smiled bitterly. What he said just now was right. It was Lu Chen who finally won the beauty. He raised his head subconsciously, but his face suddenly froze. Wait, how could he? Wang Shua followed his gaze and took a deep breath in shock. He saw that Suyu looked relaxed with his hands behind his back. He climbed the mountain as if he was walking on flat ground, without the slightest pressure. Most importantly, he was walking in front of Lu Chen. Lu Chen looked like he wanted to catch up, but the distance between them was getting farther and farther. Did he find some kind of trick? Wang Shua was ashamed and annoyed. Even a level 9 fairy could climb the 5 Elements Mountain and meet a beauty in a barren land. How could he, the sovereign of the eastern continent, admit defeat? Gritting his teeth, Wang Shua growled with a reddened neck and forced himself to climb the mountain. However, the higher he went, the stronger the energy of the 5 elements was. After taking 6 steps, the enormous energy of the 5 elements pressed down onto Wang Shua, causing him to roll a few times on the staircase. In the end, he fell off the foot of the mountain and spat out a large mouthful of blood, causing him to be in an extremely sorry state. After trying 5 steps, Zheng Quan realized that he couldn't force himself any further and could only retreat with a bitter smile. As he raised his head and looked at Suyu, who was halfway through, regret filled his heart. If he had known that Suyu would have such an outstanding performance in the test, he would not have distanced himself from him in the beginning. I refuse to accept this. Wang Shua's white teeth were stained with blood. Lu Chen ascended the mountain and took the beauty. He was completely convinced. Lu Chen was an extremely young all-creations strong practitioner. His talent was outstanding, and he could not compare to him. But what about Suyu? He was just a trifling level 9 fairy, a wild lad from the desolate region. On the mountain, Suyu walked with his eyes closed. The higher he went, the stronger the energy of the 5 elements was. Not only did he not feel pressured, but his eyes were full of joy. Under the energy of the 5 elements, Suyu felt that in his mind, he had some inspiration about the understanding of the last demon inscription. Although it was weak, it was far better than painstakingly comprehending it. If he was given a few days to train on the mountain, he would definitely be able to break through the last obstacle and thoroughly comprehend the 100 demon inscriptions, thereby controlling the 5 elements' divine prison. With joy, Suyu kept going up. The higher he went, the faster he walked. Gradually, he was like a gallop, leaving a series of afterimages on the mountain. The girl at the foot of the mountain was stunned. In her eyes, it did not seem like the energy of the 5 elements was suppressing him, but Suyu was chasing after the stronger energy of the 5 elements. This guy's attainments in the 5 elements seemed to be extraordinary, the girl said in surprise. In the great Oriental family, there were no more than 10 people who could run like this on the 5 elements mountain. Immediately, her crescent eyes squeezed out a mischievous look. Hee, Miss seems to be in trouble this time. Suyu's mind was getting clearer and clearer, and he was getting closer and closer to breaking through the barrier of the last layer of comprehension. An indescribable sense of comfort surged into his heart, and he felt like he was walking on air. However, in the midst of the extreme comfort, the energy of the 5 elements around him disappeared, and the feeling of imminent enlightenment was forcibly interrupted. This feeling was like a man and a woman suddenly becoming impotent in the middle of the pleasure. Suyu was annoyed. He opened his eyes and glanced around, only to realize with a bitter smile that he had already reached the top of the mountain. There was a seal on the top of the mountain that restrained the energy of the 5 elements. If only the energy of the 5 elements was stronger. Comprehending the demon inscriptions here would be twice the result with half the effort, Suyu said regretfully. However, he did not forget the purpose of this trip. He opened his eyes and glanced around, wanting to see Dongfang Tianfeng in person. In the end, he did not see Dongfang Tianfeng. Instead, he saw a handsome young man standing on the top of the mountain. He was dressed in plain clothes, carrying a sword case on his back. His facial features were handsome, and his temperament was out of this world. At first glance, he looked like a celestial being from heaven. Upon seeing such an extraordinarily handsome and spirited person, Suyu shuddered in fear. What the hell? Wasn't that him? The young man in front of him was none other than Suyu himself. Upon closer inspection, Suyu suddenly realized that it was just a virtual shadow created by the power of all creations. How could his virtual shadow appear here? Suyu was anxious. Whoosh! There was a heavy gasp behind him as Lu Chun climbed up the mountain with difficulty. Looking at Suyu's relaxed appearance, Lu Chen's eyes suddenly became fierce. He had never regarded Suyu as an opponent, and he had full confidence in this marriage contest. Just now, when he persuaded Suyu to leave, he had never really taken him seriously. In the end, he, a strong all creations, had such difficulty climbing the mountain, while Suyu was extremely relaxed. A sense of crisis suddenly rose in his heart. But then, his eyes were attracted by the virtual shadow, and his pupils shrank fiercely as he cried out in horror, "Suyu!" He was also in the glittering jewel wonderland that day, traveling with Dongfang Tianfeng. Suyu did not know him, the #1 expert in the region, but he knew Suyu. In order to enter the Martial Tower, he had also submitted to Suyu's Book of the Heart's Oaths. After witnessing Suyu's various feats, he had long been in awe. Even the demon-devouring emperor, a Jiuzhou talent, had been pinned to the ground and killed hundreds of times, let alone him. Even if he had broken through to the all creations, Lu Chun did not think he could defeat the little finger of this new generation of heaven rulers who had cut through the starry sky of Jiuzhou. Therefore, as soon as he saw Suyu, his heart felt weak. When he realized that Suyu was a virtual shadow, Lu Chun breathed a sigh of relief and murmured, "So it's a virtual shadow." He recognized Suyu's appearance as an old man, and he had also seen Suyu's true appearance that had been transmitted from the central prefecture. Not only him, but as a peerless heaven ruler who had shocked Jiuzhou overnight, a peak existence second only to the destined emperor, news of him spread extremely quickly. Especially among the younger generation, all challengers who had participated in the glittering jewel wonderland and witnessed Su Yu's divine power with their own eyes, had inquired about Su Yu's true identity with awe. The ruthless demonic man who had once killed Xue Di was undoubtedly him. Moreover, the current Su Yu was far stronger than he had been in the past. Swoosh! All the seals in the mountain were activated, and the power of 5 elements was suppressed. The maidservant flew all the way up and announced with a smile, "Congratulations to the 2 of you for passing the 3rd test. Now, the 4th test begins." "Wait." Lu Chen stammered, "Why is there a 4th test? Aren't there only 3? The maidservant rolled her eyes at him. "There are 2 of you. Are you going to split the young lady in half and give her half to each of you?" This. Lu Chen hesitated for a moment, took a light breath, and fixed his gaze on Su Yu. "It seems that a showdown is inevitable. Make your move." Without waiting for Su Yu's response, the maidservant said angrily, "Who told you that your opponents are each other?" Lu Chen pointed at Su Yu. "There are only the 2 of us here. If we don't challenge him, who should we challenge?" However, when he met the maidservant's half-smiling eyes, Lu Chen seemed to realize something. He twisted his neck with great difficulty, as if he was lifting a rusty metal puppet, and twisted it towards Su Yu. He took a deep breath and said, "Could it be that the 4th test is a challenge? A challenge to the treasure boy, Su Yu?" What he got was a harmless smile from the young woman. Yes, in the young lady's heart, there are 2 great heroes in the world, Zhan Wushuang and Su Yuxian. Oh, it's changed to Su Yu now. Only by defeating their virtual shadows can you gain the young lady's approval. Lu Chen's face was as pale as wax, as if he had been thrown into an ice cellar. His face was blue, and his whole body was stiff. After a long while, he said angrily, "Are you kidding me? How can I defeat him? He is a starry sky genius who can fight with the glittering jewel mortal fairy." The maidservant shrugged. "It's not like you are challenging the real person. A virtual shadow, it's just a virtual shadow. It probably only has about half of the real person's abilities." Unexpectedly, Lu Chen shook his head like a broken drum. No, even if it's only half of his abilities, I can't compete with him." Suddenly, he understood and said angrily, "Wait, your young lady doesn't want to find a husband at all, does she? She made such a difficult 4th test. Let me ask you, in this world, except for Zhan Wushuang or Su Yu himself, who can pass this test?" The maidservant pursed her lips and laughed secretly. He was right, the young lady didn't want to get married at all. However, under the pressure of the family, she had no choice but to make her own decision in the test and make the 4th test that no one could pass. In this world, among the men of the younger generation, apart from Zhan Wushuang, perhaps only Su Yu himself could pass this test. Thinking of this, the maidservant couldn't help but cover her mouth and giggle. This trick of the young lady is too cruel. It would be strange if these young talents who passed the test didn't go crazy. Where is the young lady? I want to ask her face to face. My sincerity was in vain, but in the end I was played like this. I can't accept this. Lu Chen roared, obviously unwilling and extremely angry. The movement at the top of the mountain attracted the attention of a few people at the foot of the mountain. They went up the mountain one after another, and when they understood what had happened, they were also furious. Although they didn't have the chance to pass the last test, they still felt like they had been played. The maidservant, who was laughing just now, turned cold in the blink of an eye. You can't accept this? This is the great Oriental family. If you can't accept this, you can sue them. The 2 of you only have one choice: challenge or give up. Answer within 3 breaths, or you will be considered to have given up. Chapter 1098. The maidservant did not dare to provoke him further. The women of the great Oriental family had short lifespans because of the curse. To ensure the continuation of the family, they often recruited young talents to mate with the young women of the family. If this matter was made public, it would be detrimental to the recruitment of the women of the other families. Miss has gone to rest. If you succeed in the challenge, she will come out to meet you, the maidservant said. The maid muttered in her heart. The young miss really went to rest, because it was impossible for anyone to pass this trial. Okay, you have 3 breaths to choose. The maidservant thought for a moment and added, if you 2 give up, you can choose one of the 4 women in the second test as your fiancé. They are all unmarried and pure women. Although their status in the great Oriental family is not as high as that of the 2 misses, they are more than enough to match you. Hearing this, Zheng Quan and Wang Shuo were tempted. The 4 stunning beauties were really rare, so it was not a big loss. If it were them, they would definitely choose to give up. Humph! How could Lu Chen bear this humiliation? As the saying goes, it is better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. Even if he was defeated by Su Yu's virtual shadow, he would never settle for the second best and receive the favor of Miss Su. Miss Dongfang, Lu Chen, will remember this, Lu Chen said fiercely as he raised his sword and slashed at Su Yu. He used all his strength in this strike, knowing that he would be defeated, so it was not a fancy move. Just like in the Marshall Tower, Su Yu's virtual shadow copied the performance in the Marshall Tower. He started with the meteor light stream great formation, followed by the 5 elemental heaven extinguishing formation, followed by the heavenly orchid silver bamboo sword. With a scream, Lu Chen could not resist 3 moves at all. He flew backward and fell to the ground, vomiting blood. He was filled with grief and indignation. The great Oriental family had gone too far. At this moment, a helpless sigh was heard. I will give it a try, but I will make it clear in advance that I only want to meet Miss Su. As for the marriage, I see that Miss Su is unwilling. If you pass, I will not force you. The maidservant was surprised. If this guy was not here to become Miss Su's fiancé, then what was he doing here? But it was fine, Miss Su wanted it. Thank you for understanding, Miss Su. I thank you on behalf of Miss Su. The maidservant bowed and watched Su Yu's challenge with ease. In her heart, there was no other ending. Su Yu walked forward and smiled bitterly. He actually wanted to challenge his own shadow. How absurd. Looking at the virtual shadow, Su Yu walked forward without any preparation. Is he courting death? Su Yu's few moves can break through our defenses. If we don't take the initiative, we won't stand a chance at all. Zheng Quan opened his mouth, his face full of confusion. Wang Shuo sneered. It wasn't easy for him to get to this stage. Of course, he doesn't want to expose his lowly strength. Only by being defeated by Su Yu can he find a reasonable excuse for himself. Even the maidservant was puzzled. She had heard from her mistress that in order to defeat Su Yu's 3 moves, one had to grasp 3 points: speed, accuracy, and ruthlessness. He had to defeat Su Yu before the 3rd move, the sword energy. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to win. She couldn't understand what Su Yu was trying to do, so she rested her chin on her hand and watched him with a playful expression. However, what happened next made them freeze. Su Yu had clearly walked over, but Su Yu's virtual shadow couldn't move at all. To be precise, it wanted to move, but it couldn't. It could be vaguely seen that the meteor light stream formation was constantly trembling. It wanted to operate, but it was fixed by some kind of power, unable to move. Just like that, Su Yu walked over as if nothing had happened, and lightly slapped Su Yu's virtual shadow with his palm, smashing it directly. On the summit, there was only the sound of the wind, and the rest was dead silence. Only Su Yu didn't care. Of course, the one who knew him best was himself. Of course, only Su Yu knew how to break the move. He could take the initiative with a time freeze. The maidservant was the first to come back to her senses. She screamed, but bit her tongue. She couldn't help but cover her mouth. Her eyes were filled with horror and tears of pain. She stammered, but because her tongue was bitten, she was incoherent. Stamping her feet, she ran down the mountain in a panic. Her face was very pale, as if it was the end of the world. And the rest of the people on the summit were all dumbfounded and in disbelief. Su Yu's virtual shadow was actually broken by this unknown old guy? If in the first 3 tests, Su Yu had found the trick that they hadn't discovered in time, then in the 4th test, he had to fight with the world-famous Su Yu directly. There were no tricks to speak of. I can't accept this. Wang Shuo couldn't believe that this country bumpkin he looked down upon could defeat Su Yu's virtual shadow. Take this, dragonfly touching the water. Wang Shuo walked as if he was flying, leaving a series of residual shadows. He rushed in front of Su Yu and pointed a finger at his chest. His finger was as fast as lightning, gathering all the vital energy in his body. This move was about breaking the surface with a single point, gathering all the vital energy in his body into a single point, creating an extremely powerful force. As an 8th grade almighty, most 9th grade almighty wouldn't dare to face this move head-on. However, Su Yu didn't move at all, allowing his finger to point at his chest. Wang Shuo sneered contemptuously. That's all you've got, however. Before he could finish his sentence, Wang Shuo's expression changed abruptly. With a loud cracking sound, accompanied by a heart-wrenching pain, the finger that was pointing at Su Yu's chest broke, as if it was pointing at a solid fairy artifact. Breaking the surface with a single point was certainly a wonderful move, but what if the surface was more than 1,000 pounds? Su Yu's dantian was 80 times bigger than an ordinary 9th grade fairy, and the vital energy stored was far beyond the reach of a 9th grade almighty. How could a mere 8th grade almighty's vital energy finger shake Su Yu? My hand? You cheated. Wang Shuo was furious, still thinking that Su Yu had cheated. Get lost. Su Yu frowned, feeling disgusted. He swept his sleeve. It was just a sleeve, but when it hit Wang Shuo, it was like 100,000 mountains, blasting him into the sky. Blood sprayed all the way, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. An 8th grade almighty was sent flying into the sky with a wave of a sleeve? This Zheng Quan's teeth were chattering, and he was terrified. At this moment, how could he still believe that Su Yu, whose cultivation couldn't be seen through, was really just a 9th grade fairy? Even a 9th grade almighty couldn't achieve the power to send him into the sky with a wave of a sleeve. Could it be that he was an all-creation's old monster? When Su Yu looked over, Zheng Quan's face was full of embarrassment, and he unconsciously bowed and smiled apologetically. Senior Su, please forgive me if I have offended you. Su Yu nodded lightly, and without looking at anyone else, he came to the pavilion and waited quietly. The servant ran all the way in a hurry, probably to inform Dongfang Tianfeng. My lady, something bad has happened. The servant ran all the way, losing one of her embroidered shoes, but she had no time to care, so she ran to the lady's boudoir barefooted. The lady in white was leaning against the bed, holding a book of cultivation techniques in her hands, and was studying it carefully. Hearing that, she said indifferently without raising her head, "What happened? Why are you so flustered?" My lady, something big has happened in the 4th test. The servant was so anxious that smoke was coming out of her mouth. The lady in white looked calm. They're not reconciled, and they're causing trouble, aren't they? Let them be, and if it gets out of hand, inform the people in the manor to drive them out. Do they need to consult me for such a trivial matter? No, it's not that. The servant was out of breath, and after taking a few deep breaths, she said anxiously, "It's the 4th test designed by my lady. Did someone pass it?" Pow! With a dull sound, the lady in white's hands trembled, and the book in her hands fell to the ground. A pair of crystalline eyes looked over, and her curvaceous body stood up abruptly. Her tranquil expression was filled with surprise and disbelief. You mean, Su Yu's virtual shadow has been defeated? The servant nodded like a chick pecking at grains. Yes, I saw it with my own eyes. Su Yu's virtual shadow was like a dumb penguin, and he was smashed by that person with a single palm strike. The lady in white's face turned extremely ugly, and she felt indignant and wronged. She sat back on the edge of the bed, and her eyes were filled with sorrow. she said mournfully. In the end, I didn't manage to escape the misfortune of the great Oriental family. Her snow-white palms were clenched tightly together, and her nails were almost digging into her flesh. The servant was sad and consoled her. My lady, why do you have to hope for Suyu? He has never met you before, and he has no feelings for you. Even though you admire him, he doesn't know about it. This will only delay you. The servant knew that her lady was proud and arrogant, and she would not marry anyone but a hero of the age. Among the 4 great starry sky elites, Zhan Wushuang and the demon-devouring emperor were the most dazzling. However, Zhan Wushuang was the destined emperor and the last disciple of the Central Prefecture's king. He was beyond her reach, and the demon-devouring emperor was ferocious and like a beast. She was unwilling to marry him. In the end, there was a proud and arrogant heaven ruler who had defeated all the starry sky elites. Especially after hearing her sister Dongfang Tianfeng's amazing boasting when she returned, she was particularly concerned. Coupled with his true appearance and many stories about him, he was quite in line with the requirements of a future husband. Unfortunately, they were destined to have no future. Seeing that the young miss was about to cry, the maid suddenly had an idea. That's right, that person said that he only wanted to see the young miss. He pitied the young miss and said that even if he won, he wouldn't force the young miss to marry. Upon hearing that, the lady in white suddenly raised her face and said in surprise, "Did he really say that? Is there anyone around to testify?" "Yes, Mr. Luchin and 3 passers-by A, B, and C can all testify." The servant nodded obediently, her face beaming with joy. How could she have forgotten about this? Even though the great Oriental family was looking for a husband, this person had said that it didn't matter if the engagement was not successful. All right, then I'll meet him and fulfill his wish. The lady in white's snowy cheeks were flushed, and her eyes were filled with joy as she arrived at the 5 Elements Mountain. From afar, she saw an old man with a silver mask sitting in a pavilion, waiting quietly. Why is it an old man? The lady in white was surprised. The servant shrugged. It should be because he looks old. Don't our great Oriental family have old men in their 20s who look like they're in their 60s or 70s? Because of the curse, the people of the great Oriental family aged very quickly, and they understood Su Yu's prematurely aging. Yes, remember to give him some compensation after this. We can't let him come here for nothing. The lady in white made up her mind, and glided into the pavilion like a butterfly. She bowed gracefully. "Greetings, Mr. Su." Su Yu's heart skipped a beat when he saw the lady, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "What a fairy dressed in white!" He had seen many beautiful women, and the lady in front of him could probably be ranked in the top 10. Upon hearing his compliment, the lady in white was not happy, but worried. She thought to herself, "Please don't let him go back on his words after noticing my beauty. If that's the case, it'll be troublesome. Mister, your strength is unparalleled, and I admire you very much." The lady in white tried to divert Su Yu's attention elsewhere. Su Yu merely glanced at her, and he had no other intentions. He had seen too many beautiful women, but there were only a few who could sway his heart. "Yes, I'm Su Zhenlong. May I ask where Miss Dongfang is? Are you her servant?" Upon hearing this question, everyone present was stunned. Not only Lu Chen, but Jing Quan, and even the pretty servant were stunned on the spot. The lady in white's body stiffened slightly, and she looked embarrassed. She couldn't help but glance at Su Yu. How could this person treat her like a servant? She was displeased. Although she didn't care about her identity, she couldn't stand being treated like a servant. The pretty girl immediately tried to salvage the situation for her master. She said sheepishly, "Mr. Su, this is Miss Dongfang. I guess you haven't seen her before. I came here for her, and as you wished, she came to see you in person." Chapter 1099. His impolite words once again rendered the few people on the mountain peak speechless. Lu Chen was dumbfounded. "What are you doing? You haven't even figured out who you want to meet, and you're here to join in the fun? No matter how well-mannered the woman in white was, she was annoyed. The marriage selection was a major event of her life. How could this man be so stupid? She was ashamed and angry. Staring at Su Yu, she said angrily, "I am Dongfang Yu, the eldest daughter of the great Oriental family. May I ask who you are looking for? How did you find me at the marriage selection?" Su Yu knew he was in the wrong in the face of the beauty's anger. So, he hurriedly apologized. "I didn't mean to disturb your marriage selection. I came here to find a Miss Dongfang. Everyone calls her Miss Dongfang. She is a direct descendant of the great Oriental family. Her maiden name is Dongfang Tianfeng. I don't know why I found you." Hearing this, everyone blinked their eyes and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Even Dongfang Yu let out a chuckle. In that instant, her smile was like a flower, pure and beautiful like a snow lotus. The pretty girl laughed and said, "Sir, didn't you know that there are 2 young ladies in the great Oriental family? One is my master, the eldest daughter, and the other is the second daughter." Wait. Su Yu suddenly remembered that the people in the glittering jewel mortal wonderland all called Dongfang Tianfeng the second daughter. Was this a misunderstanding? Had he made such a big mistake? Even though Su Yu was always calm, he still blushed a little. "Sir Su, why are you looking for my sister?" Dongfang Yu was relieved. Since he wasn't here for a blind date, he definitely didn't want to marry her. "So?" she asked curiously. "Oh, I met you in the glittering jewel mortal wonderland. I'm here to visit you," Su Yu said ambiguously. Dongfang Yu didn't doubt him. Her younger sister was different from her. She was active and had many friends. Her friends often visited her. However, this person in front of her was the only one who had coincidentally come to visit her marriage selection convention. "My younger sister is in the house. Let me take you there." Dongfang Yu thought for a while and decided to do him a favor. In this way, Su Yu wouldn't pester her. Su Yu stood up. "Thank you, eldest daughter." After taking Su Yu away, Lu Chun and the others also left one after another. Their emotions were extremely complicated. The eldest miss and second miss of the Dongfang family were born from the same father and mother. They were very close to each other and lived next to each other. When he arrived at Dongfang Tianfeng's courtyard, she was nowhere to be seen. After asking around, he found out that she had been summoned by the North Mansion mistress. "Wait a moment, my sister will be back soon," Dongfang Yu said. She sat beside him in the yard and looked at Su Yu curiously. "Can you tell me how you defeated Su Yu's virtual shadow? I've studied it meticulously. Among the younger generation, there are only a few who can defeat the virtual shadow. Apart from Zhan Wushuang, only Su Yu himself can do it. Dare I ask, where are you from? Why have I never heard of your name?" In her opinion, someone with such a high level of battle prowess would definitely not be a nobody. Su Yu was speechless. He was, of course, Su Yu's real body. But it was a pity that he couldn't say too much about it. "I come from a desolate region in the central prefecture, and I've always been training alone. I rarely show myself." "Is that so?" Dongfang Yu's bright eyes stared at Su Yu for a while. She glanced at the sword box on his back from time to time and couldn't help but ponder. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. He wouldn't be recognized, would he? Fortunately, at this moment, the sound of footsteps could be heard from outside the yard. One of them was Dongfang Tianfeng, who was as pure as a neighbor's little girl but was actually two-faced. Beside her were several elders of different ages. Su Yu's eyes lit up. He had finally seen Dongfang Tianfeng herself. However, seeing her in person, the pressure from the ordeal of people did not weaken, which disappointed Su Yu. It wasn't Dongfang Tianfeng, the woman who could help Su Yu resolve the ordeal of people that Yun Yazi mentioned, was not her. He had spent so much effort to find the wrong person. How could he not be disappointed? Fortunately, he still had 7 days to continue his search. "Hey sister, you're here? Who is this?" Dongfang Tianfeng burst in. She couldn't help but ask curiously when she saw her sister and a strange man in their yard. Dongfang Yu was afraid that Su Yu would reveal that he was the one who passed the test. She said hurriedly, "This is your old friend. He's here to visit you. Wait, don't you know him?" She suddenly came to herself and stared at Su Yu with vigilance. She quietly retreated to her sister's side under the protection of the elders. "I don't know him." Dongfang Tianfeng blinked her eyes in confusion. "Who are you?" Dongfang Yu's pretty face turned cold. This person had come to visit her sister as a good friend. How could she not know him? What happened? The two elders behind her were both middle-aged. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man, dignified. Dongfang Yu told the whole story, including the matter of the marriage. She didn't dare to hide anything, because she realized that this person might have some ulterior motive for pretending to be Dongfang Tianfeng's friend. "Your Excellency, I deeply admire your courage, but I'm afraid you won't be allowed to leave easily since you've offended the great Oriental family." The middle-aged woman looked at Su Yu calmly. The other middle-aged woman next to her stared at Su Yu with a slightly strange expression, her face full of suspicion and doubt. Seeing that there had been a misunderstanding, Su Yu really didn't want to have a conflict with the great Oriental family, especially since the person in front of him called herself the Mansion Master. She should be the Mansion Master of the North Mansion, whose strength was at the peak of all creations. Ahem, second miss, people of high status tend to be forgetful. Su Yu laughed bitterly. Facing Dongfang Tianfeng, he took off his mask, revealing an old face. That was how he faced them in the glittering jewel wonderland. Dongfang Tianfeng also felt that the sword box on Su Yu's back was somewhat familiar. When he took off his mask, she opened her mouth in surprise and stammered, Su Yuxian? She never dreamed that Su Yuxian would come to visit her. After the battle in the glittering jewel wonderland, she was very clear about the gap between her and this person. Zhan Wushuang was a heaven ruler who was second only to one person. How could he take a fancy to her? Surprise, joy, satisfaction, and all kinds of emotions welled up in her heart. She was so excited that her face was flushed. "Why did you come to see me?" Of course, Su Yu didn't dare to say that he was looking for her to resolve the ordeal of people. He said calmly, "I passed by the eastern continent and thought of you, second miss, so I came to visit you. Nothing else." While the two of them were talking, the people around them were surprised. The North Mansion mistress's calm face was filled with surprise. "Are you the rising star of Jiuzhou, Su Yuxian?" Su Yu cupped his fists and bowed. "Mansion mistress, please forgive me for disturbing you." Although the North Mansion mistress was a woman, she was heroic like a man. She laughed and helped him up. "My dear nephew and Feng'er have been through life and death together. How can I disturb you by visiting you? I'm more than happy. My dear nephew, please get up." Such a Jiuzhou heaven ruler took the initiative to visit her. She was more than happy. How could she be displeased? With her countless experiences, if Su Yu continued to grow, he might reach the mortal fairy level in the future, but it was very likely that he would reach the peak of all creations. Of course, she couldn't wait to be on good terms with such a potential stock. What was more precious was that the great Oriental family had a very good impression of this young man, who fought against Glittering Jewel and resolved the crisis of the demonic god. Without Su Yuxian, the Glittering Jewel demonic god would have been the first to be exterminated. Now that he was here in person, how could she not be enthusiastic? The only regret in her heart was that she couldn't use him for her own purposes. She looked at her two daughters, especially the eldest daughter, and sighed silently. However, the middle-aged woman beside her suddenly sneered. "It's really you. What? Who is it?" Su Yu only paid attention to Dongfang Tianfeng and didn't pay attention to anyone else. When he heard the voice and looked over, his face couldn't help but change. He said awkwardly, "What a coincidence, South Mansion mistress." The other middle-aged woman was none other than the noblewoman who guarded the divine level transmission portal. Didn't they say that the North and South mansions wouldn't visit each other unless there was something important? Why did the South mansion mistress suddenly come? Sister, do you know each other? The North mansion mistress was surprised. Listening to her sister's tone, it seemed that she knew Suyu. How could the South mansion mistress speak up? She had been fooled by this young man, so the divine level transmission portal was blocked. Her face changed several times, and she gritted her teeth. Nothing. The North mansion mistress was puzzled, but she didn't think there was any deep hatred between the two, so she didn't pursue it further. She turned to Suyu and said meaningfully, "Haha, I remember you have another identity, right?" The other identity was naturally Suyu. Due to the change of identity, not everyone knew that Suyu Xian was Suyu. I had some conflicts with the Central Prefecture's king, so I had to change my appearance. Please forgive me, Suyu said. As he spoke, his body changed, and he returned to his youth. Suddenly, there was a scream. Dongfangyu, who was on the side, cried out in surprise. Her crystal eyes stared at Suyu in disbelief, not even blinking. When her younger sister said he was Suyu, Dongfangyu had guessed it, until now it's you. The South Mansion mistress was also surprised, and then she looked delighted. Ha! The figure I saw that day was really you. As she said that, she couldn't help but look at Dongfangyu, full of relief. The North and South Mansion mistresses looked at each other, and both had a strange look in their eyes. Until the South Mansion mistress said, "Sister, it's really effortless. I thought Yuer wouldn't be with him in this life, but I didn't expect the two of you to be fated. It's really a marriage of thousands of miles." The North Mansion mistress smiled and said nothing. As a mother, how could she not understand her daughter's thoughts? Ever since she learned of Suyu's existence, her eldest daughter was grateful to Suyu for his kindness to the great Oriental family, and she also fell in love with such a talented king. Although she didn't say it explicitly, her thoughts were obvious. However, the North Mansion mistress didn't consider the possibility. After all, Suyu was far away in the Central Prefecture, and he didn't have any relationship with the great Oriental family. Could they kidnap him and bring him here to marry Dongfangyu? Seeing Dongfangyu like this, the North Mansion mistress held a marriage contest for her in order to stop her daughter's thoughts. Once she had a husband, she wouldn't have any wild thoughts. Unexpectedly, they didn't look for Suyu, but Suyu came to them. Whether from the perspective of Yuer or the great Oriental family, this son-in-law was the best candidate in Jiuzhou. Sister, this matter needs further consideration. Although he is here, he has nothing to do with Yuer. It's too much to ask him to marry Yuer. We are recruiting talents to show our goodwill. If we push him too far, it will backfire. Chapter 1100. Choosing a bride by accident. You mean? The South Mansion mistress recalled what her niece had said just now. He had successfully passed all 4 tests and entered as the first candidate in the marriage selection. Now he even had a status. Whether he was willing or not, he was now the prospective son-in-law of the great Oriental family. Thinking of this, the South Mansion mistress was overjoyed. She stared at Suyu and looked him up and down. The more she looked at him, the more she found him pleasing to the eye. He was handsome and young, but he was extremely talented. The great Oriental family hadn't met many outstanding talents like him in tens of thousands of years. Yuer was blessed. Suyu's hair stood on end under the gaze of the South Mansion mistress. Mansion mistresses, if you have something to do, please go ahead. I'm leaving now. I'll visit again if I have the chance. Suyu had a bad feeling about this, so he left immediately. However, the North Mansion mistress smiled and put her hand on his shoulder. She smiled amiably and said, "My dear son-in-law, you're already here. Where are you going?" Dear son-in-law? Suyu didn't manage to transition from nephew to son-in-law, and his mind went blank. Haha, you came all the way here for Yuer. It must have been hard on you. The North Mansion mistress and the South Mansion mistress stood on either side of Suyu, holding him in the middle. Both of them looked at him as if they were looking at a treasure, and they didn't want to miss a single hair on his body. Su Yu didn't know that the great Oriental family had been thinking of making him their son-in-law for a long time. Instead, he foolishly joined the great Oriental family, and coincidentally won the first place in the marriage selection. He was like a fat pig that ran into a butcher's house and delivered himself to his door. How could Su Yu dare to be careless about such a major life event? He hurriedly said seriously, "Mansion mistresses, this is a misunderstanding. I didn't know that I had entered the marriage selection, and I didn't mean to delay the eldest lady's life event. Please consider her happiness first, and don't make a rash decision." The two mansion mistresses looked at each other and smiled. The North Mansion mistress couldn't have been more cordial. She even wished she could be Su Yu's mother-in-law. "Hee, Su Yu, you won the first place in public and became the only one who passed the test. This is tantamount to announcing to the whole world that you've become Dongfang Yu's fiancé. This matter has been decided. Yuer's reputation and integrity are tied to you, and she can't marry anyone else. Are you trying to push my Yuer into a pit of fire by shirking your responsibility?" Su Yu became anxious and hurriedly said, "I heard that Miss was not willing to go on a blind date, so I challenged the fourth test. I also promised her that even if I succeeded in the challenge, I would not force Miss to marry him. Many people can attest to this." The North Mansion mistress was like a cat that had caught a fresh and delicious mouse. Even her smile was sneaky. "You said that Yuer is not willing to go on a blind date? Who said that? Did Yuer say it herself?" "No." Su Yu's mouth was bitter. The North Mansion mistress said again, "You promised that even if you win, you won't force Yuer to marry you. You have no proof for this. Do you have any documents to prove it? Do you have your blood essence to sign as proof? Is there a notary?" "No." Su Yu's face was about to squeeze out bitter juice. The North Mansion mistress said again, "In that case, you have nothing, yet you chose the challenge. Is it obvious that you are preparing to marry Yuer?" Su Yu suddenly felt very wronged. He glanced around and found Dongfang Yu, who was at the side with her head lowered and not saying a word. With a hopeful look, he said hurriedly, "Eldest Miss, you can prove it. She was not willing to go on a blind date, that was absolutely true. As long as she shook her head, the matter would come to an end. However, for some unknown reason, Dongfang Yu kept her head lowered and did not say a word." Su Yu was anxious. "Eldest Miss, marriage is an important matter. I hope you can make a decision soon." Looking at Su Yu, who was asking Dongfang Yu for help as if he was grasping at a life-saving straw, the North and South Mansion mistresses both smiled sympathetically. This guy probably didn't know Yuer's thoughts yet. Dongfang Yu lowered her head because her pretty face was flushed and nervous. Her usual indifference was gone. She stammered, I'll listen to my mother's arrangement." After saying that, she ran away like a jog, leaving Su Yu alone, dumbfounded. Su Yu was stunned. He felt like he had been tricked by others. The North Mansion mistress burst into laughter. "My dear son-in-law, since Yuer has said so, you should stay here peacefully. We will arrange a wedding ceremony for you in a few days." The two manor heads exchanged glances and ruthlessly arranged for the wedding ceremony to be held so close to each other in order to prevent any accidents from happening. Sensing the seriousness of the situation, Su Yu said in a stern voice, "No. I have two things that I must tell you. First, I already have a family, so I can't marry eldest Miss again." Unexpectedly, the two mansion mistresses looked calm, as if they had already expected it. "So what? You are so outstanding. If you don't have a family, we will be surprised." In this world, strength was everything. Was it strange for a genius like Su Yu to marry several women at the same time? This didn't matter? Su Yu clenched his teeth. "Fine, the second thing is that I must not stay in the great Oriental family. I don't want to bring you a great disaster." "How great is the disaster? Tell me about it." Both of them looked at Su Yu with a playful expression, as if they were looking at their son-in-law. They didn't seem to care about the trouble that Su Yu was talking about. The Central Prefecture's king is hunting me. He will arrive in 7 days at the latest. The expressions of the two mansion mistresses suddenly froze. The North Mansion mistress said in a low voice, "Is this true? And not an excuse?" Su Yu shook his head. "To tell you the truth, I am going through the 3-9 ordeal. Next will be the human ordeal. This ordeal should be with the Central Prefecture's king. It is extremely dangerous. I came here because I received a hint to find something related to the Phoenix. Only then can I resolve the crisis. That's why I came to see Second Mississippi. Unfortunately, Second Miss is not the person I am looking for. Time is of the essence. Please forgive me for not being able to stay. I will leave now." Seeing that Su Yu was speaking sincerely and didn't seem to be lying, the North and South Mansion mistresses hesitated and didn't dare to stop Su Yu. This was related to the Central Prefecture's king. If he came, should the great Oriental family fight against the Central Prefecture's king for a junior? Su Yu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He had finally convinced them. However, when Su Yu walked out of the courtyard, he was suddenly blocked by an invisible force and bounced back. So what if it is the Central Prefecture's king? Who can take away the son-in-law that the great Oriental family wants? The hoarse voice of an old woman floated in the void. The North and South Mansion mistresses calmed down and said with joy, "Yes, we will obey the ancestors' decree." The voice in the void then dissipated. It was self-evident that it was one of the two great mortal fairies of the great Oriental family. "My dear son-in-law, let's talk." The North Mansion mistress smiled. Su Yu wanted to leave, but under the watchful eyes of the two mansion mistresses, it was difficult to get away. Moreover, there was a mortal fairy secretly watching him. He didn't understand why he was worth the risk of fighting against the Central Prefecture's king for the great Oriental family to take him in. It was too risky to just take him in as a son-in-law. With a bitter smile, Su Yu pretended to be helpless, but there was a faint light in the depths of his eyes. In the dead of night, Su Yu quietly took out the wooden bird and secretly activated it. However, as soon as the void split open, the leisurely voice of the North Mansion mistress came from it. "My dear son-in-law, where are you going?" Su Yu's heart skipped a beat, and he said embarrassedly, "Haha, I came out for a walk." "What a coincidence, the mansion mistress is here too." "Really? Why don't you take me for a walk?" Before Su Yu could put it away, the wooden bird was taken away with a swoosh, leaving a string of chuckles in the void. Su Yu was not discouraged. Not long after the mansion mistress left, he quietly left the house and quietly walked out of the mansion. As a result, before he left the yard, a luxurious figure leaning against the moon gate appeared at the gate of the yard. "Yo, taking a walk in the middle of the night?" The South Mansion mistress smiled faintly. Su Yu said, "Yes, the flowers are beautiful and the moon is full. How can I let such a beautiful scene go to waste?" "Oh, only ghosts appear in the middle of the night. You have to be careful." The South Mansion mistress smiled and turned to leave. "What? She let me go?" Right at that moment, the void behind Su Yu split open, and the South Mansion mistress's palm reached out from it. She took out a seal and patted Su Yu's back lightly. All of a sudden, Su Yu felt that there was a mark in his body. He could not help but ask in surprise, "What is this?" "The Dongfang mansion is too big. I was afraid that you would get lost, so I left a mark on your body. Haha, go for a walk." The blue veins on Su Yu's forehead bulged, and he tried to use his vital energy to erase it. As a result, the mark was embedded in Su Yu's body like a brand, not moving an inch. Ordinary methods could not erase the mark. This woman. Su Yu was annoyed and amused at the same time. This was equivalent to monitoring his movement. No matter where Su Yu went, he could not escape their eyes. This was not marrying a bride, it was clearly a forced marriage. Back in the house, Su Yu took his time to think. Including today, 3 of the 9 days had passed, and the oppression of the ordeal of people was faintly stronger. As for the word Feng, he could not understand for a long time who it was referring to or what it was referring to. He could not stay in the Dongfang family for a long time, so he had to leave as soon as possible. As for the mark on his body, was there really anything in this world that could resist the impurities of the Milky Way star sand? Su Yu's lips curled into a smile. The next morning, the sky had just turned bright, but the servants in the mansion were already busy decorating the mansion. Because the Dongfang family was about to welcome a new son-in-law. Standing at the door, Su Yu looked helpless. "Sir." A beauty in a white dress came leisurely. Her face was as pretty as snow, and her cheeks were slightly red. She looked at Su Yu shyly. Su Yu sighed. "My lady, have you really decided to marry me? If you insist on not marrying me, the marriage selection ceremony can be cancelled." From the 4th test, which was impossible to pass, it could be seen that Dongfang Yu was not a weak and indecisive woman. Instead, she was decisive and independent. "As for marriage, I will listen to my mother's arrangement." Dongfang Yu's crystal eyes were sparkling and she said softly, "Sir, do you dislike me?" Looking at the stunning white fairy in front of him, Su Yu smiled bitterly. "My lady, your appearance and temperament are impeccable. You are the best among the people. However, I don't want to implicate the Dongfang family and bring disaster to your people. If possible, please persuade your mother." Hearing Su Yu's praise, Dongfang Yu was relieved. Her pretty face was slightly red and her ears were red. "Don't worry, Sir Su. With the 2 ancestors here, the Central Prefecture's king may not dare to offend you." The Central Prefecture's king was indeed the most powerful among all the mortal fairies. However, in a real fight, the Central Prefecture's king may not be as powerful as the 2 mortal fairies. However, Su Yu knew clearly that the human ordeal was unavoidable, and there would be a fight in 6 days. Sighing silently, Su Yu said no more. He kept thinking about the plan to escape from the Dongfang family in his mind. "Sir, if you need anything in the mansion, you can tell us. This is the ancestors' order. We will try our best to satisfy all your requirements," Dongfang Yu said. "Requirements?" Looking at the looming 5 elements mountain in the distance, Su Yu said, "I want to use the power of 5 elements in that mountain to cultivate. Is it possible?" Cultivate. Dongfang Yu's bright eyes dimmed. Did he want to avoid her by cultivating? However, she didn't show her disappointment on her face. She stood up hurriedly and said, "Yes, that mountain was found in the far west by the 2 ancestors. It is very beneficial for the people who cultivate the power of 5 elements. Therefore, they moved it back to the family. The inside of the mountain has been opened up as a place for cultivation. If Sir Su wants to cultivate, it is not a problem." Seeing Su Yu was interested in the 5 elements mountain, Dongfang Yu said while walking, "The 5 elements mountain contains the power of 5 elements. The deeper you go into the mountain, the stronger the power of 5 elements is. Even the 2 ancestors haven't walked into the core of the mountain." Su Yu was surprised. "Even the strong mortal fairies can't go through this mountain?" More than that, the ancestors said the origin of this mountain is mysterious. When it was found, the skeleton of a demon was buried under the mountain. Dongfang Yu looked a little serious. When the ancestors brought it back for identification, they said the skeleton was the skeleton of a deity. The skeleton of a deity? Su Yu was taken aback. Staring at the 5 elements mountain, he was quite shocked. This mountain could crush a deity to death? It's a pity that it was built so long ago, at least hundreds of thousands of years ago. The skeleton of the demon god has lost its divinity. Otherwise, it would be a treasure, Dongfang Yu said with regret. Hearing such secrets, Su Yu was more interested in the 5 elements mountain. He was also curious about the mysterious Far West. There always seemed to be some strange things that couldn't be found in Jiuzhou. The 5 elements mountain was dug out, and a straight passage was made leading to the belly. Judging from the dodging marks, it wasn't just a moment ago, but a long time ago. Touching the stone wall, Su Yu immediately felt the hardness of the 5 elements mountain. His fingertips quietly breathed in and out a trace of silver sword energy. To Su Yu's surprise, the sword energy of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo that could cut through anything cut out a series of sparks when it hit the stone wall. Not even a scratch was left on the stone wall. Noticing Su Yu's movement, Dongfang Yu smiled softly. The material of the 5 elements mountain is very hard. So far, the ancestor hasn't figured out its composition. He only knows that it's not from Jiuzhou. The 2 elders have tried their best, but they couldn't knock any stone chips off from the mountain. How could Dongfang Yu know that Su Yu used the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, which was known as the greatest divine bamboo in Jiuzhou? Theoretically, it could even break a fairy artifact. However, it didn't leave a trace. The hard material alone could be regarded as the world's most precious treasure. The great Oriental family really found a top-grade treasure in the far west. My power of 5 elements is shallow. I'll leave you here. If you feel that you can't bear the power of 5 elements anymore, don't go deeper, Dongfang Yu said as she left slowly. Su Yu walked into the depths of the cave alone. Slowly closing his eyes, he broke through the last level of comprehension with the help of the increasingly intense power of 5 elements. In the 9 jade spiritual pearl, inside the 5 elements divine prison. In a boundless darkness, a black-green water dragon was constantly absorbing the brilliance emitted by the demon clan characters. His eyes were filled with morbid excitement. Almost there. Just a little bit more, and that brat will comprehend the 100th level. Finally, he's going to succeed. I finally found a substitute with nature-defying comprehension. Finally, I'm going to get out of here. Brat, don't let me down. The black-green water dragon grinned hideously. However, right at this moment, as Su Yu entered the 5 elements mountain, the black-green water dragon's face changed slightly. This feeling, is it that thing? Chapter 1101. Su Yu was completely unaware of this as he went deeper into the mountain. As the power of 5 elements grew stronger, Su Yu's understanding of the 100th Demon Clan inscription became clearer and clearer. When he was halfway into the cave, the power of 5 elements was approaching the limit of Su Yu's endurance. He stopped there and sat down with his legs crossed to comprehend it quietly. Soon, Su Yu entered a state of contentment, just like when he was climbing the mountain. He could feel that the 100th Demon Clan inscription would be broken through here. 1 day passed, and there were 5 days left before the human ordeal. Yuer, is he still training in the mountain? The North Mansion mistress came to the cave and frowned slightly. Dongfang Yu had been guarding the entrance for a day. Her beautiful face looked a little gloomy. Mother, I think it's better to let it go. I can see that he has no feelings for me. After a day of thinking, Dongfang Yu calmed down from the initial excitement. She admired a dragon among men like Su Yu, and it was her wish to marry him. But was this really appropriate? The North Mansion mistress sighed softly. I know you're kind-hearted and don't like to be forced. But since the great ancestor has found out about this matter, there's no way we'll let it go. Whether you're willing or not, the Dongfang family must take this dragon among men into our fold. The ancestor? Dongfang Yu felt bitter. The great Oriental family could not disobey his will. Looking into the depths of the cave, Dongfang Yu's eyes were full of apology. 2 days passed, and there were 4 days left before the human ordeal. A small part of the blessed and heavenly lands had been turned into ruins because of the long battle between the 2 mortal fairies. Their attacks were accompanied by strange phenomena of heaven and earth. Mountains and rivers were destroyed, and the earth veins were cut off. Everywhere they passed, they left behind ruins that could not be restored for hundreds of years. The Duanxian cliffmaster, who had been struggling for 5 days, was also showing signs of decline. Compared to his former splendor, he was in a sorry state at the moment. There was a bloody hole the size of a bowl on his chest, which went through his chest and back. It was extremely horrible. His soul seemed to be separated from his body, as if it was about to leave his body. The mortal fairy's strength in his body was exhausted. Beside him, there were a lot of damaged treasures scattered on the ground. Even so, he still stared coldly at the young man in the royal robe and didn't take a single step back. Although the Central Prefecture's king had consumed a lot of his energy, he was not seriously injured. He said in a low voice, "I can't believe it. What did he give you to make you fight with me for 5 days at the risk of your life?" The Duanshian Cliffmaster said coldly, "You don't need to know about this." As he spoke, he tore open the void behind him with a backhand palm and slowly entered it. He sighed silently in his heart. The strength of the Central Prefecture's king is beyond my expectations. I thought that he could hold on for 6 days, but I only managed to hold on for 5 days after using all my magic treasures. Kid, I've tried my best. The rest is up to you. Glancing at the treasures on the ground, the Duanshian Cliffmaster's eyes flashed with pain. Just thinking about his agreement with Su Yu, his eyes were filled with hope. If the boy could survive, this deal would not be considered a loss. The Central Prefecture's king did not stop the Duanshian Cliffmaster as he watched him retreat. Even as a top mortal fairy, he was not sure that he could kill the severed fairy Cliffmaster. It was not easy to kill someone who had reached the mortal fairy realm. Moreover, he had more important things to do now. His gaze turned cold as his heart thumped. The Eastern Continent? When did he escape to that place? Swish. Half an hour later, a figure in an imperial robe appeared in the sky above the Central Prefecture city. Staring at the Central Prefecture city that had been smashed into ruins by a sword, the young face of the Central Prefecture's king was gloomy, and his blue veins were wriggling on his angry face. With a cold glance, the Central Prefecture's king stared at the ruins under his feet and shouted, "Come out!" Suddenly, a gloomy ghostly aura rose from under the ruins and split into two, turning into two hazy ghostly figures of a man and a woman. Don't get me wrong. I saw so many corpses, and it would be a pity to waste them like this, so I used them to raise the ghost army. This was not my idea. The man and the woman spoke at the same time. Not only were their words synchronized, but even their tones were exactly the same, as if they were speaking with the same person. The Central Prefecture's king raised his eyebrows. "Why are you here?" "Oh, the plan has been exposed, of course. I have to find a way to meet you," the man and the woman said. He knew that the Ghost Clan had been exposed, so he said coldly, "I ordered my disciple Zhan Wushuang to receive you. Where is he?" The man and the woman shrugged their shoulders and said, "He was like this when I came here. Your disciple is probably under the ruins." Hearing that, the Central Prefecture's king was not worried at all. He shook his head firmly. The Emperor of Destiny can only be killed by heaven, and ordinary people can't kill him. He should have left the Central Prefecture. "Well, tell me, do you know who did it?" The man and the woman shook their heads at the same time. No. When this place was destroyed, they were still on their way here. The Central Prefecture's king was annoyed and said, "Forget it, anyway, the 9 prefectures are in my pocket, and this is just a Central Prefecture city." There was a hint of worry in his eyes. Where was the glittering jewel mortal fairy? This woman, who was called Master by him, was his biggest fear. Now, her disappearance was not a bad thing for him. After thinking for a while, the Central Prefecture's king said, "You lead the Ghost Clan army to stay here, and I will go to deal with an important matter first. It will take me a few days to half a month." After that, he came to the Divine Level Transmission Array. The surroundings were destroyed, but the Divine Level Transmission Array was not damaged. He stood on the array, and his eyes flashed coldly. "Dirty ant, you have lived long enough." However, when he launched the array did not move, and his face could not help but be stunned. "The array at the other end is sealed?" A look of anger appeared in his eyes, and immediately turned into a cold snort. "I will let you linger on for another day." After that, he tore the void and rushed to the eastern continent. Suyu, who was in the midst of his comprehension, felt his heart skip a beat, and he woke up from his meditation. An inexplicable chill came without any warning. With a sigh of relief, Suyu restrained his emotional fluctuations, but the chill around his body was looming and did not dissipate. They only resisted for a short period of 5 days? Suyu's eyes were fixed. This chill should be the arrival of the Central Prefecture's king, who came faster and earlier than expected. He could not stay in the eastern continent any longer. Staring at the 5 elements divine prison in his hand, Suyu was struggling. After 2 days of meditation, the last demon character was about to break through. If Suyu was given 2 more days, he should be able to break through smoothly. However, time waited for no man, and it was too late. Looking at the depths of the cave, the only thing he could do now was to continue to go deeper and use the more powerful power of the 5 elements to break through the shackles. Since the 5 elements divine prison was an emperor-based saint artifact, if he exerted its power, it would be helpful to resolve the tribulation of human. Running his vital chi, Suyu took a step into the depths of the mountain. Dong, with a dull sound, Suyu was pressed by the power of the 5 elements beyond the limit, and the blood in his body was boiling. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body was bounced off as if he was hit by a huge force. The limit is difficult to break through. No wonder the mortal fairy old monster was blocked, Suyu said secretly, and did not break through with brute force. If brute force could break through the limit, perhaps the 2 mortal fairy old monsters of the great Oriental family had already entered the hinterland of the 5 elements mountain and touched the hidden secrets of the mountain. After pondering for a while, Suyu's eyes flashed, and he took another step. At the same time, golden and black light emerged on the surface of his body, and the 2 shone with each other, making the black and gold intertwined on the left and right halves of Suyu's body, which looked very strange. The power of the divine dragon and the power of the demonic god emerged together between Suyu's legs. The powerful power of the 5 elements erupted from the 5 elements mountain was extremely repulsive. However, it failed to blast Suyu back. Relying on the 2 kinds of power, Suyu quickly took 9 steps in a row and entered an area in front of him that few people could reach. This place could only be reached by the old monsters of the peak of all creations, and it contained the power of the 5 elements 10 times stronger. Under such great pressure, Suyu's comprehension in his mind sped up a lot. Not enough. Suyu shook his head. Under such pressure, he might be able to complete the final comprehension in 1 day. However, 1 day later, the Central Prefecture's king would come. Staring at the darker depths of the cave, Suyu fell into a short period of thought. Further ahead, it was the area that only the 2 great mortal fairies could withstand. The pressure of the power of the 5 elements there was enough to kill people. It was not that the previous mansion masters had not tried it before. They often entered the area ahead, and were immediately seriously injured. Their lives were in danger and they had to retreat quickly. Suyu touched his chest, and with a hint of awe in his eyes, he took a step forward. In an instant, a feeling that his body was about to be crushed rushed into his heart, from inside to outside, as if his whole body was about to be broken. Streaks of blood marks as thick as fingers densely covered Suyu's body. This was a sign that his body had reached its limit and was about to be broken, and it was getting more and more intense. However, at this critical moment, an emerald heart in Suyu's chest started beating faster, and it released an extremely pure life force. The hideous blood marks that densely covered his body quickly healed. Clenching his teeth and enduring the severe pain, Suyu took a few steps in a row and came to the depths of the dark cave. On the ground here, Suyu felt the residual power of the mortal fairy on the wall and the claw marks left on the stone wall. Those were the marks left by the mortal fairy old monster clawing the stone wall to prevent being pushed back by the power of the 5 elements. This place was the critical point of the mortal fairy old monster. Su Yu's heart was beating violently as if it was about to jump out of his chest. It was very uncomfortable. The power of the 5 elements here is enough for me to comprehend in half a day. Su Yu's eyes showed a hint of satisfaction. Suppressing the discomfort in his heart, Su Yu sat cross-legged, ready to complete the comprehension of the 100th Demon Clan character here for a long time. He subconsciously looked deeper, which was the forbidden area that the strong mortal fairy old monster had never set foot in, the real hinterland of the cave. Unlike what he imagined, the deepest part of the cave was not dark, but emitted a soft golden light, shaped like mist, very hazy, making it hard to see clearly. Suddenly, Su Yu saw something out of the corner of his eyes and was shocked. He looked at it carefully, but there was nothing in it. Am I hallucinating? Su Yu couldn't help but doubt himself. Perhaps his heart was beating too fast and was overwhelmed, causing him to hallucinate. However, when Su Yu retracted his gaze, he found a faint beating in the corner of his eyes. This time, Su Yu was taken aback. He suddenly got up and looked into the depths of the cave. After careful observation, Su Yu finally found the source of the movement. It turned out to be a golden skeleton. At this moment, the skeleton was turning its head, and a pair of eyes burning with dark green flames was looking at Su Yu from afar. The shape of the skeleton made Su Yu gasp. It's you, how is this possible? Chapter 1102. The head of the golden skeleton was that of a flood dragon, but the body of a human. As he looked at Su Yu, his eyes, which were burning with emerald flames, were filled with confusion. It was as if he was wondering where he had seen Su Yu before. Gang Dalei. Su Yu was extremely shocked. He wouldn't be surprised if the 5 Elements mountain hid the remains of a deity. However, the remains belonged to an old friend of his. Among the people he knew, there was only one person with a flood dragon head and a human body, Gang Dalei. The disciple of the guardian of the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds, Elder Gyo. Why was he here? In this ancient mountain with hundreds of thousands of years of history? Also, why was he only left with a skeleton? Gang Dalei scratched his head as if he was confused. He stared at Su Yu for a long time, then slowly crawled deeper into the cave. There were a few sparkling and translucent colors there, as if something was moving. Su Yu stared at Gang Dalei until he crawled into the darkness before he retracted his gaze. The bewilderment in his heart did not dissipate even after a long time. A combination of a flood dragon and a human, it's really rare. The voice of the evil god sounded in his mind. You seem to know him? Su Yu nodded lightly. I do. He's an old friend. He's from. He could not help but pause. Gang Dalei's background was still a mystery. He was raised by Elder Gyo, who came from the Central Prefecture. What a waste, he is already dead. If not, we could capture him and study him. It is hard for a combination of a flood dragon and a human to survive. I believe that the flood dragon that gave birth to him is definitely not an ordinary flood dragon. Evil God said. Dead. Su Yu's heart tightened. Gang Dalei had followed the creatures of the Zhenlong continent to Jiuzhou. Why did Gang Dalei die? What about the others? What about Xia Jingyu? Where was Qin Xianer? Su Yu had a bad premonition about Elder Liao's disappearance, and he became restless and anxious. However, Su Yu's rationality told him that now was not the time to panic. The Central Prefecture's king was coming. If he wanted to ascertain the current situation of the true dragon living beings, he would have to survive this trial first. Suppressing the uneasiness in his heart, Su Yu sat down with his legs crossed and seized the time to comprehend. As time passed, Su Yu's comprehension of the last demon clan's inscription became smoother and smoother. Under the suppression of the dense power of the 5 elements, the obscurity of the past was like water flowing into a canal. He only needed half a day to successfully comprehend it. Somewhere in the central plains, Han Xuan's face was full of anger. Her feet were tied to a strange iron rod by a long chain. The iron cudgel was stuck deep into the ground, emitting a cold and gloomy aura. Its material was also quite extraordinary. Han Xian secretly tried to break free, but she found that not only was the chain indestructible, but even the iron rod could not move at all. She glared at the petite girl in front of her and said angrily, "Third junior sister, does Master know that you've brought me here?" "I don't know," third junior sister answered expressionlessly. Han Xian bitterly sighed. "What exactly do you want to do to me? They imprisoned me here for a few days and only allowed me to comprehend the Jade Maiden Heavenly Frost art. For this, they even found some strange treasures to help me comprehend the last level." She was curious as to why her master and third junior sister wanted her to cultivate the Jade Maiden Heavenly Frost art to perfection. This cultivation method was imparted to her by her master. As for its use, she didn't know, nor did she bother to know. In any case, her master told her to cultivate it, so she cultivated it. But no matter how stupid she was, she should be able to understand that this cultivation technique was not ordinary. "Don't you know? Cultivate it." The third junior sister was expressionless as she sat beside him. There was a complicated look in her clear eyes. She looked up at the sky and murmured, "It should be soon. There are still 3.5 days left." There were only 3.5 days left before the human tribulation. At the edge of the eastern continent, an uninvited guest came. Along with a huge void crack that ran through the sky and the earth, a domineering figure in an imperial robe stepped out. This step made the world fall silent. All creatures around were silent and didn't even dare to breathe, as if they were in awe of this emperor of the 9 prefectures. His deep eyes seemed to see through hundreds of millions of mountains and rivers, and he stared at the most central city of the eastern continent. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Aunt, I'm coming. No one in the world can save you." In the central city of the eastern continent, in a secret room, 2 old women were sitting opposite each other. One was dressed in black, and the other was dressed in white. On the cold face of the old man in black, a pair of eyes opened slowly. "Do you feel it?" The old woman in white opened her eyes and nodded slowly. "The Central Prefecture's king is coming. What should we do? Is it really necessary for us to resist the human tribulation for Suyu?" The old man in black hesitated. The old man in white said affirmatively, "Of course. The Central Prefecture's king is ambitious. He plotted to kill the emperor of the 9 prefectures, Shen Yichen, and was willing to be the slave of the glittering jeweled demonic god. Now 100 years later, I don't know how powerful he is," the old man in black said. As the oldest family on the continent, it had experienced more than the history of the continent. The secrets of the continent were never secrets to them. No matter how powerful he is, we have to fight him. It is possible for that guy to get a ticket. The ticket alone is worth the effort of the great Oriental family. Moreover, there is no reason that we can't resist a mortal fairy together," the old woman in white said affirmatively. The old woman in black was silent for a while, and then nodded slightly. "Well, for the ticket we will sacrifice our lives." In the belly of the 5 Elements mountain, Suyu was sweating profusely, and his body was trembling constantly. 5 halos of different colors surrounded Suyu, and they were becoming more and more solid and clear. The 5 Elements divine prison in his palm was full of colorful lights, which were flickering like boiling water. Its body was changing constantly, shrinking and expanding as if it was about to explode from the inside out. All the signs showed that Suyu's comprehension of the 5 Elements' divine prison had reached a critical juncture. All of a sudden, Suyu opened his eyes, and 2 beams of 5-colored light shot out from his pupils, heading straight for the outside of the cave. Dongfangyu, who was waiting silently outside the cave, changed her expression abruptly, and hurried away. The 2 colorful lights disappeared into the sky, and opened 2 pitch-black circles in the boundless universe. Dongfangyu said in surprise, The power of 5 elements is so powerful that it can break the void. Has his attainment in the power of 5 elements reached a high level? As far as she knew, even the ancestors who had studied the power of 5 elements for a long time only reached a high level. This was the limit that a mortal could comprehend. However, it took the 2 ancestors many years to figure it out bit by bit. How old was Su Yu? Dongfang Yu was more and more shaken. Her reason told her that forcing Su Yu to do this was not what she wanted. After hesitating for a long time, she turned around and left. She didn't hear Su Yu's laughter in the cave. After trying for so long, I finally succeeded. Holding the 5 elements divine prison in his hand, Su Yu wiped the sweat on his face, and couldn't suppress his excitement. The difficulty of refining this emperor-based saint artifact was beyond imagination. After several years, he finally succeeded. After comprehending 100 words, he finally had a certain degree of control over the 5 elements' divine prison, and could exert 10% of its power. While he was feeling happy, the black-green water dragon in the dark space of the 5 elements' divine prison also laughed. Ha, 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 he finally succeeded. I have been waiting for this day for a long time. The black-green water dragon was very excited, and a hideous smile appeared on his face. You trapped me in the 5 elements' divine prison for 100,000 years. Frost Divine Flood Dragon, I will definitely kill all your descendants when I break out of the prison. His hideous roar echoed in the dark space, which was very unpleasant to hear. Now, I just need to wait for that brat to open the 5 elements' divine prison, and then I can get out of here. The black-green water dragon was waiting excitedly for Su Yu to try to operate the 5 elements' divine prison. However, after waiting for a long time, he didn't see any movement from Su Yu. So, he turned his eyes and turned into a small shadow of a flood dragon, which slowly drilled out of the 5 elements' divine prison. Congratulations, you finally succeeded. The black-green water dragon was full of joy, and no coldness could be seen on his face at all. Su Yu was not surprised by his appearance at all. He nodded his head slightly and said, "Yes, I succeeded. How should I activate it next? Like the 5-pulse dominant wave, I just need to instill vital energy into it?" The black-green water dragon shook his head seriously. No, after comprehending the 100th Demon Clan inscription, you can activate the real power of the 5 elements' divine prison to suppress it. You only need to follow the spell I taught you to activate the 5 elements' divine prison. Okay, go ahead. The black-green water dragon suppressed his excitement to prevent Su Yu from noticing it. Then, he recited a series of strange spells seriously. As he recited the spell, the 5 elements' divine prison trembled slightly. It seemed it had sensed something. Have you memorized it? After reciting, the black-green water dragon stared at Su Yu. Su Yu nodded his head. Then, have a try. The power you can exert is beyond your imagination, the black-green water dragon said. However, Su Yu just looked at the black-green water dragon quietly without moving an inch. Su Yu's calm eyes made the black-green water dragon feel a little uneasy. He forced a smile and said, "What? Don't you want to control the 5 elements' divine prison?" Su Yu shook his head and said calmly, "To be precise, I don't want to be controlled by others." "What do you mean?" The black-green water dragon's heart skipped a beat, but his face was blank. However, Su Yu said calmly, "Don't you feel tired after pretending to be an artifact spirit for so long?" The black-green water dragon's face froze instantly. Then, he stared at Su Yu's profound eyes to make sure Su Yu was not testing him. Then, he took a deep breath and said in a gloomy tone, "How do you know I am not an artifact spirit?" Su Yu said calmly, "Because you have never called me master. As an artifact spirit, you shouldn't call me master. It was natural for an artifact spirit to obey its master. However, the black-green water dragon always called Su Yu Yu or boy. This was not just the personality of an artifact spirit, but the black-green water dragon couldn't call him master at all. Is that all? The black-green water dragon stared at Suyu. Suyu said with a faint smile, "Of course, the real owner of the 5 elements divine prison, the devil god." Hearing that, the black-green water dragon's pupils shrank fiercely. Then, he said in horror, "How do you know I am the devil god? I have never performed any miracles." Chapter 1103. He had a feeling that someone had betrayed him secretly. "Of course, you told me that yourself." Looking at the black-green water dragon, Suyu said with a sneer, "An artifact spirit dares to ask another person to refine the treasure itself? The only explanation is that the master is either dead or the black-green water dragon is the master. Obviously, I haven't received any message from the 5 elements divine prison after refining 100 demon clan inscriptions, which means the master is not dead. So, the answer is obviously the latter. You are the real master of the 5 elements divine prison. As for the monster god, the Dongfang family once obtained the remains of a monster god from the foot of the 5 elements mountain. Since the 5 elements divine prison and the 5 elements divine mountain are connected to each other, I guessed that the remains might be your real body." The black-green water dragon stared at Suyu with a gloomy expression. He was so surprised that Suyu's insight was totally beyond his expectation. In fact, even the last bit of his conjecture was not wrong at all. In the past, his body was crushed by a powerful enemy who used the 5 elements mountain. Only his soul and celestial energy sphere were left. Then, he escaped into the 5 elements divine prison to avoid death. However, the 5 elements divine prison could only be opened by an external force. Although his soul was preserved, he couldn't escape. In this way, the 5 elements divine prison changed hands several times until it fell into Suyu's hands. He had been trapped here for 100,000 years. Finally, he deceived Suyu to refine a part of the 5 elements divine prison. As long as he activated the 5 elements divine prison, the soul of the black-green water dragon could escape. However, he didn't expect that Suyu had already seen through his plan. "When did you suspect me?" the black-green water dragon said angrily as he knew his plan had failed. Suyu shrugged his shoulders and said, "When did I believe you?" Suyu didn't believe any of the words of the black-green water dragon. The black-green WYRM was taken aback. After a long while, it revealed a self-deprecating expression and couldn't help but roar with laughter. "Ha ha ha, I'm a dignified demon god of my generation, but I was trapped by a little human junior." When he was about to go crazy, Suyu's calm voice came into his ears. "How difficult it is for you to escape?" "What?" The black-green flood dragon couldn't believe his ears. "You mean you can let me go?" "Of course," Suyu replied without hesitation. "Do you have a grudge against me?" The black-green water dragon thought for a while and shook its head with certainty. "No." "Do you have a grudge against me?" Suyu asked. "No." "Then, what's the reason why I shackled you?" Suyu asked. The black-green flood dragon was silent for a while, and a hint of slyness flashed in its eyes. "You and I have no grudge against each other. Sealing me will do you no good. So, are you going to let me go?" "I'm not," Suyu replied without giving it a second thought. The ink azure water dragon was stunned, and then it said in a low voice, "Are you playing with me?" "No." Suyu raised 2 of his fingers. "First, it is indeed not beneficial for me to seal you, but it is also not beneficial for me to release you. Second, after all, I have refined a part of the 5 elements divine prison. As its owner, I guess you don't want me to live in this world after you escape. Moreover, my cultivation is far inferior to a deity's." The black-green water dragon, who was lost in thought for a while, said slowly, "Second, I can sign a deity's contract with you. I promise I won't kill you. A deity's contract can't be violated. You can rest assured about this. First, what do you want in return?" He knew Suyu was negotiating with him. First, I don't know anything about a deity's contract. So, I won't believe anything you say. Second, what I want is very simple. Before I become stronger than you must help me with everything. Su Yu gave 2 conditions that he had prepared beforehand. No way. The black-green water dragon refused on the spot without hesitation. He was a mighty god, but he couldn't serve a lowly race's junior like a servant. Su Yu's answer was quite straightforward. Then you can continue to stay in the 5 elements divine prison. Just hope you will meet a genius who can comprehend 100 demon clan inscriptions as fast as I can. The black-green water dragon's face darkened. If such a genius was so easy to find, he wouldn't have been trapped here for 100,000 years. Moreover, Su Yu wouldn't allow the 5 elements divine prison to be discovered easily. Suppressing the 5 elements divine prison in a desolate area was a piece of cake for him. After weighing the pros and cons, the black-green water dragon found he had no bargaining chips in front of Su Yu. How do you want me to help you? The black-green water dragon asked. Su Yu said with a smile, It's very simple. You can protect me from death. There are 2 ways to protect me from death. First, you can help me improve my strength. Second, you can help me solve a life or death crisis, such as the one in front of me. Staring at Su Yu's smiling face, the black-green water dragon had a feeling he was fooled. It seemed this guy had planned this for a long time. However, did he have a choice? Tell me, what's the crisis? I'm trapped in the divine prison, so I can only control 30% of the divine prison's power. Unless a mortal fairy descends, I can easily suppress him in the divine prison, and he won't be able to escape forever, the black-green water dragon said proudly. Su Yu said with a faint smile, It's a pity that the enemy I will face this time is not only a strong mortal fairy, but also a top one among the mortal fairies. The black-green water dragon's face suddenly became stiff. Then, he said angrily, How could you provoke such a powerful enemy at your level? Tell me, can you help me? If you can't, I can seal the 5 elements divine prison now. No one can find it in 1,000,000 years, let alone 100,000 years. Su Yu said calmly. The black-green water dragon kept rolling his eyes as if he was weighing something. I advise you not to be half-hearted. If you fall into the hands of such a mortal fairy, do you think you can escape from him even if you break free? It's more likely that he will use it to refine some magic weapons. After all, it is the soul of a devil god. Hearing that, the black-green water dragon snorted. Obviously, Su Yu's reminder had disrupted his plan. The 5 elements divine prison is not enough to suppress a top mortal fairy, but I can still suppress him for 1 or 2 days. 1 or 2 days. Su Yu's eyes lit up. That's enough. After reaching an agreement, Su Yu left the cave. When he was about to leave the cave, he saw Dongfang Yu standing at the entrance of the cave, looking into it anxiously. Eldest lady. Su Yu walked over and said. Dongfang Yu stared at Su Yu, her crystal-like eyes filled with reluctance. Her snow-white sleeves fluttered and 2 objects flew out. One was the wooden bird that had been taken away by the South Mansion mistress, and the other was 9 extremely delicate formation flags. Although your flying artifact can travel through the void, how can it be faster than my mother and my aunt? These are the space spell flags, which were refined by the 2 ancestors for me. They were intended to save my life and help me escape in times of crisis. Although they are not as good as the divine-level transmission array, they are comparable to the super transmission array, which is enough to transport you to another prefecture. Miss Dongfang Yu? Su Yu was surprised. He knew how precious these spell flags were without her telling him. Even for a mortal fairy, it took a lot of effort to refine such spell flags. They were not sold in the market at all. Dongfang Yu said apologetically, I'm sorry, Lord Su. On behalf of the great Oriental family, I apologize for your behavior recently. Now, while the 2 ancestors are still in seclusion, you should leave as soon as possible. Su Yu was very grateful. He took the wooden bird and the spell flags and thanked her sincerely. Miss Yu is so righteous. I admire you. I will remember this favor. Goodbye. Su Yu grabbed the wooden bird and activated it immediately. Then, he broke through the void and left the great Oriental family immediately. Dongfang Yu's snow-white pretty face was surrounded by 2 pink spots. Su Yu's call of Miss Yu made her satisfied. She thought to herself that this was the right way to go. Half a day later, as a huge space crack ran through the sky and Earth, the entire central city of the eastern continent was suddenly shocked. From the secret chambers of the North and South mansions, 2 figures, one black and one white, suddenly flew out. They were the black and white mortal fairies of the great Oriental family. The 2 of them stared at the crack as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Streaks of golden light diffused from the crack. Anyone who stands in my way will die. A figure in a royal robe stepped out of the crack. His whole body was emitting golden light, which could not be looked at directly by those who were not all creations. Ordinary strong almighty couldn't even see his face clearly. His peerlessly overbearing words even shook the sky to the point it exploded apart and densely covered the sky in fine spatial rift. Every word and action of a mortal fairy could cause a strange phenomenon in the world. However, he was the first one who could crack the sky and earth with just a word. The black and white mortal fairies suddenly became serious. The Central Prefecture's king was much more horrible than the rumors. Hand over Su Yu and you will not die. The Central Prefecture's king stared at the black and white mortal fairies coldly with his hands behind his back. To catch Su Yu, you must pass through us first. The black and white mortal fairies looked at each other. Then, a faint demonic aura surged up from their bodies. Their bodies also changed strangely. A pair of black screeches appeared on the top of their heads. Their bodies were also wrapped by the demonic aura, which made them look like demons. The Central Prefecture's king said with a playful smile, I heard that you are the descendants of the demonic god Linlang. It seems the rumor is true. As soon as he finished speaking, his whole body emitted a dazzling golden light, which covered thousands of miles of the sky. The golden light contained extremely domineering power. Everything that was hit by the golden light was turned into nothingness in an instant. The black and white mortal fairies changed their expressions. Then, they both activated the strength of demonic god to resist the golden light. However, when they resisted the power of the golden light, 2 palm prints came out of the golden light and patted their chests respectively. In an instant, their bodies were burned by a ball of golden flames. In a breath's time, the flames had burned through their chests and backs. The divine tribulation fire? The black and white mortal fairies were shocked. They hurriedly stepped back and activated the strength of mortal fairies to suppress the spread of the golden flame. However, when they activated the strength of mortal fairies, another pair of palm prints suddenly attacked them. They knew it was the attack of the Central Prefecture's king. However, they were forced to use their strength of mortal fairies to suppress the divine tribulation fire. How could they resist it? This palm print bombarded their bodies into a mist of blood. In the mist of blood, the golden divine flame was still burning. The 2 mist of blood retreated quickly and recondensed into the black and white mortal fairies in the distance. When one reached the level of the mortal fairy, his body could be reborn at any time. This was also the reason why the mortal fairies were so difficult to be killed. Hand over Su Yu and I will spare your lives. I will say this for the last time. The Central Prefecture's king walked out of the golden light with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked indifferent. If he was conceited last time, he was confident this time. The black and white mortal fairies' eyes were full of horror. They had thought that the strength of the Central Prefecture's king would be greatly enhanced after he became the servant of the glittering jewel demonic god. However, they never expected that he would be so powerful. They were both mortal fairies, but they were no match for him. Deep horror and bitterness were rolling in their hearts. It was definitely not a wise decision to take Su Yu in. They overestimated themselves and underestimated the Central Prefecture's king. After looking at each other, the black and white mortal fairies made a decision in a moment. They might not be afraid of death, but what about the great Oriental family? Chapter 1104. The Central Prefecture's king glanced coldly and stepped into the cave. However, he soon came out again, and his face was cold. "How dare you lie to me?" The black and white dust fairies' faces changed slightly, and they said in unison, "He is in it, how can it be fake? Oh, is it possible that he entered the deepest part? Inside, even I can't get in. Say, where did you hide him?" The Central Prefecture's king asked. The black and white dust fairies were shocked, and they could not help but glance at the people of the great Oriental family, and finally locked their eyes on a woman who was uneasy. Where is Suyu? Didn't I ask you to stay outside the cave?" The black dust fairy asked quickly. Dongfang Yu looked at the Central Prefecture's king, who looked down at the whole great Oriental family, and her face was pale. He has left." "What? Left?" The white dust fairy's face changed greatly. There was only one exit to the Five Elements Mountain, and Dongfang Yu was asked to guard the entrance. As a result, he actually left, and there was no sound? No, it was Dongfang Yu who let him go. "You!" The black dust fairy was angry. She had harmed the great Oriental family. "Enough!" The Central Prefecture's king looked indifferent. "Don't pretend any more, the opportunity has been given to you." A trace of golden light, from his body, continued to shoot out, but that was only a part of the leakage. The real golden light was brewing in his body, brewing an extremely terrifying group. "Wait, we really didn't hide Suyu. He has already left," the white dust fairy hurriedly said. Staring at the expanding golden light, she was shocked. The Central Prefecture's king interrupted indifferently. "I know. The black and white dust fairies said, "Since you know that we are not hiding Suyu, why do you still do this? Please stop. Give the people of Jiuzhou a little bloody lesson. No one will dare to cover up Suyu again," the Central Prefecture's king said coldly. At this moment, there seemed to be a huge sun in the body of the Central Prefecture's king, which exploded. The endless divine fire, overwhelming the sky and the earth, covered both the north and the south prefectures. Where the divine fire passed, everything turned into ruins. The black and white dust fairies' eyes were wide open, and at the critical moment, they shouted, "Activate the Five Elements Mountain!" The two of them landed at the foot of the Five Elements Mountain and shattered the ground with a stomp, revealing a huge formation at the foot of the Five Elements Mountain. He instilled the demon god's power into the formation, and the formation was activated. The Five Elements Mountain's Five Elements power was completely activated. The majestic power of the Five Elements soared into the sky, barely blocking the divine flames falling from the sky. However, the divine fire was still descending slowly. Once it completely descended, billions of creatures in the central city of the eastern continent, including the two black and white mortal fairies and the common people, would be turned into ashes. Eastern clansmen, heed my command. All descendants of the demon god's bloodline, ignite your bloodline and instill the power of the demon god into the formation. With just the power of the two of them, they were unable to contend against the overwhelming divine fire. The closest Easterner immediately revolved the power of demon gods. But compared to the formation, his strength was far too weak. As soon as he touched the formation, his bloodline and body would be sucked dry, turning him into a dried corpse and dying on the spot. Then came the second, the third, the fourth. The people of the eastern continent had experienced the curse for thousands of years. They all had a common enemy, so they were extremely united. At this moment, no one retreated. One by one, the people of the eastern continent rushed forward like moths to the fire. The Central Prefecture's king was surprised. He wanted to create a bloody scene in one fell swoop to frighten the people of Jiuzhou. "That's good." The Central Prefecture's king thought about it and said, "Let them die little by little, and let them die slowly. It will be more impactful for the living. With a sneer, the Central Prefecture's king blew out a breath. The air currents swirled, forming a mirage in an extremely distant region. Although it was far away in other continents, it could also see the bloody scene happening in the eastern continent at this moment. At the same time, a majestic voice radiated in all directions of Jojo. Those who protect Suyu will be killed without mercy. After doing all this, the Central Prefecture's king left the Eastern clan, who was waiting for death. His figure flashed into the void and shot towards the city where Suyu was. At this moment, Suyu was taking a break. But suddenly, a shocking wave of air came from the distant central city. In the air wave, the Central Prefecture's voice echoed. Those who protect Suyu will be killed without mercy. Suyu's heart trembled, and he felt uneasy for no reason. He is coming. Suyu did not hesitate to take out the formation flag given by Dongfangyu, inserted it into the ground, and immediately activated it. The effect of the formation flag is extremely good, and it only takes a few short breaths to activate. With a space force, Suyu was teleported away. Almost immediately after he was teleported, a void crack that ran through the sky and the earth appeared nearby. The majestic figure of the Central Prefecture's king suddenly descended. Staring at the broken and dim formation flag on the ground, the Central Prefecture's king's face was cold. Let's see how long you can escape. Swish, half an hour later, Suyu appeared in the Tianyu Prefecture, and he just appeared above the Tianyu Prefecture's god-level transmission array. This should be the intention of the two mortal fairies. The huge fluctuations attracted the attention of the strong. In the city, a mortal fairy's strength came and shrouded Suyu. At the same time, a middle-aged strong man with a horn on his head teleported in front of Suyu. Are you Suyu? This person also recognized Suyu's face, showing a hint of appreciation. Suyu hurriedly said, Yes, may I ask the Central Prefecture's king if I can borrow the transmission array? The king of the Tianyu Prefecture laughed heartily. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? I have important things to discuss with you. However, as soon as his voice fell, a strong airwave rolled from the sky, which was filled with the extremely stern voice of the Central Prefecture's king. Those who protect Suyu will be killed without mercy. The king of the Tianyu Prefecture's face was stiff, and he sneered. The Central Prefecture's king is so arrogant. Do you think you can command me like the Central Prefecture's emperor? But at this moment, a peak all-creation strong man suddenly flew up with a pale face and handed over a jade pendant to the king of the Tianyu Prefecture. The king of the Tianyu Prefecture glanced at it, and the anger on his face was swept away, replaced by a few traces of horror and fear. In the jade pendant, in a mist, a mirage appeared, reflecting the scene of the distant eastern continent central city. He saw that the entire central city was surrounded by the divine fire. The famous black and white dust fairies joined forces, but they still couldn't stop the terrible divine fire. The people of the great Oriental family rushed up one by one, exhausted their blood, and were sucked dry. One by one, they fell down. But even so, the divine fire is still coming. In less than 2 days, the great Oriental family will be completely destroyed. The oldest family on this continent must be removed from the world. At the same time, billions of creatures will be buried. Such overbearing, bloody, and powerful means made the king of the Tianyu Prefecture's face turn blue. The strength of the Central Prefecture's king was beyond his expectation, and he was not his opponent. He didn't want to end up like the great Oriental family. Turning his head, the king of the Tianyu Prefecture stared at Suyu with a gloomy face. After a while, he gritted his teeth, pushed Suyu away, and shouted, "Leave the Tianyu Prefecture immediately. And do not use the divine-level transmission array." Suyu was surprised. What was in the jade pendant? However, as Suyu felt uneasy, he felt a chill in his heart. So fast, the Central Prefecture's king caught up so quickly. Suyu did not hesitate to use the formation flag and teleported again. Shortly after he left, the Central Prefecture's king came and glanced at the king of the Tianyu Prefecture coldly. "Humph, you are sensible." After that, he disappeared into the void. The king of the Tianyu Prefecture did not even dare to refute. As he approached the Central Prefecture's king, he felt a deep fear of death. Behind his back, there was already a cold sweat. When Su Yu appeared again, he appeared in the nearby state, the White Sand State. As soon as he appeared, the White Sand State was shocked by the amazing void fluctuations and teleported over. When he saw that it was Su Yu, his face changed dramatically, and a sense of fear appeared in his eyes. He said coldly, "Leave the White Sand State." He did not dare to let Su Yu stay for a moment. Su Yu did not intend to stay and immediately used the formation flag to teleport away. Almost as soon as he left, the Central Prefecture's king arrived. In this way, Su Yu continued to teleport from one state to another. The two chased and fled, shaking the entire Jojo. The Central Prefecture's king endured for 100 years, and the strength that broke out was no weaker than the glittering jewel mortal fairy. No matter which state Su Yu went to, the state kings were all frightened and uneasy. This news quickly spread throughout the land of Jojo through various channels in just half a day. Everyone knew that Su Yu had become the target of the Central Prefecture's king, and anyone who tried to protect him would be killed. Along the way, there were indeed people who did not know and tried to take Su Yu in. The end was the same as in the Mirage, and all of them were buried in the divine fire. Such bloody means shocked all the forces in the Jojo continent. After 9 consecutive chases, the Central Prefecture's king chased Su Yu to the lifeless sword domain. Looking at the broken formation flag left by Su Yu, he sneered. "I need to let you know that although the world is big, there is no place for you. I want to see how many formation flags you have left." Su Yu's feet landed on the ground, and this time he was teleported to the Huitian state, which was the state where he died in the battle against the glittering jewel mortal fairy. This state lost its king, so no one came out to drive Su Yu away. However, Su Yu did not intend to stay. In fact, there were several states where the kings did not show up, but Su Yu did not want to implicate them, so he took the initiative to leave, such as the lifeless sword state. Looking at the only flag left in his hand, Su Yu's mouth showed bitterness. He had fled all over Jojo, but there was no place to stay. This was what the Central Prefecture's king wanted to see. The last formation flag, where should he escape to, and where could he escape to? Just as Su Yu smiled bitterly, his eyes suddenly focused. He saw the sky was foggy, and the scene of the central city of the eastern continent was reflected in the clouds. In the endless divine fire, the black and white dust fairies struggled to resist the divine fire near the top of their heads. One by one, the eastern people rushed into the flames like moths, willing to be sucked dry and become dry corpses. There were hundreds of thousands of people in the great Oriental family, but now there were less than 20 or 30,000 left. However, only half a day had passed since then. Looking at the billions of creatures, looking at the great Oriental family that was about to be destroyed, Su Yu was shocked. After all, he still got them into trouble. Suddenly, Su Yu caught a glimpse of a beautiful figure in the crowd. She walked silently to the front of the formation. Under the divine fire, the fairy figure was reflected red, like a lotus, white and red, infinitely delicate. But at this moment, with a resolute face, she walked to the formation and instilled her own blood power into the formation. Su Yu's mind roared. No wonder all the state kings were avoiding him. Staring at the tragic and bloody scene, staring at the beautiful figure that was gradually unable to stand, Su Yu's mind was in turmoil. In his life, he never owed anyone a favor, and he did not want to involve others. But the great Oriental family, Dongfang Yu, since there is no place to hide, why hide? Su Yu looked back at the endless void, his eyes cold. The eastern continent is waiting for you. Swish. Chapter 1105. Shortly after he left, the Central Prefecture's king arrived. When he sensed Su Yu's whereabouts, he couldn't help but show a bit of playfulness. Back to the eastern continent. Oh, is there no way out? He grabbed the void with one hand, and the central prefecture's king's eyes were cold. The eastern continent. The black and white dust fairies clenched their teeth, barely supporting the formation, urging the power of the 5 elements of the 5 elements mountain to resist the divine fire. Even so, the divine fire was gradually suppressed, and it would not last long. Huarue, Liexien, you two lead the remaining people to escape. The spare super teleportation array in the clan is enough to allow some of the people to escape. White Dust Fairy looked at the people who had suffered heavy casualties, and her heart was full of sadness. The North and South Mansion Masters smiled bitterly. The family is in danger, but we have to escape? The Black Dust Fairy said bitterly. The power of the divine fire, even the Peak Dust Fairy, not everyone can resist it. We can't hold on for too long. There is no need to waste the lives of the people, and lead the people to escape. With that, the Black Dust Fairy glanced at the formation, and Dongfang Yu, whose bloodline was about to wither, was swept out of the formation and sighed. You are also escape. Dongfang Yu's pretty face was pale, and she smiled bitterly. I am the one who harmed the people. I can only use my life to delay a glimmer of life for the people. Let the other people escape. I stay here and die with the family. Hey, this is not your fault. It is the two of us who overestimated ourselves and tried to get the ticket, so we ended up like this. If you let Su Yu go, the Central Prefecture's king will not let go of my family. The White Dust Fairy was remorseful. They forced Su Yu to marry Dongfang Yu. Su Yu's amazing qualifications were only secondary, and he had the possibility of getting the ticket, which was the real reason. Ancestor. Dongfang Yu was deeply remorseful. Don't say anything, you did not do anything wrong. My family betrayed our benefactor, which is already ungrateful. Fortunately, you let him go in advance, so that we can keep a little reputation in this world. The Black Dust Fairy waved her hand, and the power of the Dust Fairy swept over, and all the people of the Eastern clan were wrapped up, and they were directly teleported to a very secret place in the clan, where a huge transmission array was quietly operating. As the oldest family on the continent, they would naturally prepare a way out for their clansmen. This teleportation formation was a random teleportation. They would be teleported to every corner of the continent. In this way, it could ensure that the eastern tribe would not be annihilated by the enemy. Gazing at the black and white mortal fairies who were struggling in the distance, the North and South Mansion mistresses looked at each other. With tears of grief and indignation in their eyes, they shouted in a low voice, "The people of the East, follow us." As long as they were alive, they wouldn't let down the two forefathers. They wouldn't waste the time they had bought with their lives. Under the divine fire, the two of them would definitely be annihilated. The remaining Dongfang clansmen quickly left the Dongfang family through the teleportation formation. When the divine flame approached, most of the eastern clansmen had already retreated. The black and white mortal fairies looked at each other and smiled bitterly. The great Oriental family, which had stood on the continent for thousands of years, had fallen overnight. It didn't fall at the hands of its eternal enemy, the glittering jewel mortal fairy. Instead, it fell at the hands of the Central Prefecture's king. The clansmen are all gone, you and I can rest here. It's been 3,000 years, it's really tiring. White Dust Fairy looked at the divine flame that was getting closer and closer, and her heart was relaxed. The Black Dust Fairy nodded silently and gave up the power of the 5 elements. For the continuation of the great Oriental family, in order to fight against the curse, they were really too tired. Now that they were buried in the divine flame, it was also a relief. The divine flame descended and turned the figures of the 2 mortal fairies into a living person. Although the bodies of the mortal fairies were constantly repaired, the power of the divine flame was not something that the mortal fairies could compete with. The speed of repair was far less than the speed of destruction. It was only a matter of time before they died. However, at this moment, the void above the sea of fire cracked open, and the ripples of the void were not weak. Su Yu's figure flashed out, and when he looked at the scene below, he was shocked. The divine flame made him feel like he had returned to the feeling of facing the tribulation of Thunder Feather. Looking at the two mortal fairies who were buried in the sea of fire, Su Yu's mind turned quickly. This is the only way. Su Yu gritted his teeth and shouted, "Two seniors, leave the sea of fire quickly." Hearing Su Yu's voice, the black and white dust fairies, who were about to die, were both shocked. He actually came back. The great Oriental family suffered a disaster for no reason, and it was all because of me. I can't make up for it, and I can only save one. The black and white dust fairies were ashamed. The cause of the disaster was caused by their greed for tickets. Su Yu came back to save them, which made them sigh. The divine flame is difficult to extinguish, and it is useless to save them. You can leave now. The white dust fairy sighed and closed her eyes again, waiting for the fire to completely burn her body. Su Yu nodded. Since the seniors insist, I will no longer persuade you. May I ask the two seniors, do you have anything personal that you want me to pass on to the world? Pass on to the world? The white dust fairy and the black dust fairy opened their eyes at the same time. They had no intention of leaving behind their legacy. The two mansion masters of the North and the South grew up under their careful guidance. After thinking about it, the white dust fairy somewhat understood Su Yu's meaning. Was it a pity that her magic treasures were buried in the sea of fire? The black dust fairy was unhappy. She thought that Su Yu came back to save them, but she didn't expect that it was for this purpose. However, they were angry. They did have a lot of good things on them, and it would be a pity to bury them like this. The two looked at each other, and each made a stroke towards the void. Two cracks appeared in front of Su Yu. There was an independent space in the crack, which contained the treasures they had accumulated throughout their lives. Thank you for your help, seniors, Su Yu said lightly. The black and white dust fairies were silent and gradually annihilated in the sea of fire. Eventually, their bodies shattered, and their souls turned into nothingness in the flames. Su Yu did not panic. From the two independent spaces, he took out an item each. It was not precious, but it was something they carried with them, containing their breath. Su Yu stretched out his left palm, and the emerald dragon in his palm exuded a dim brilliance. Resurrection, Su Yu whispered softly. Under the palm of his hand, a trace of soul fragments continued to gather, and a trace of flesh and blood continued to condense. When the two merged, it gradually formed a human figure. After 3 breaths, the black and white dust fairies, who were burned into nothingness, reappeared in front of him. Not only did they breathe smoothly, but their faces were ruddy, and even the accumulated injuries had dissipated. The internal injuries caused by the battle against the glittering jewel mortal fairy were swept away by the injuries left by the Central Prefecture's king. The eyelids of the two moved, and gradually opened their eyes, and their eyes were blank. I am not dead yet? The white dust fairy murmured blankly, and the black dust fairy could not understand. Until a gentle voice penetrated into the ears. This is all I can do. I will leave now. You two should quickly catch up with your people. When they looked up, they could only see Su Yu's back. Did you save us? The black and white dust fairies were shocked. They could vaguely feel that they seemed to have experienced a rebirth, and their bodies were refreshed. Looking at their storage space, except for the loss of 2 items of average value, there was nothing missing. In an instant, they realized that they might have misunderstood Su Yu. Wait. The white dust fairy called Su Yu. We will help you through the 39 tribulations, Su Yu said without looking back. I appreciate the kindness of the 2 seniors, but I don't want you to make unnecessary sacrifices. If you really want to repay me, well, the ghost race is surging in the world, and the harm is no less than that of the Central Prefecture's king. I hope you can be on guard against this. The ghost race, you don't need to say it, our state's king will deal with it, but you alone, how can you deal with the Central Prefecture's king? The black dust fairy stared at Su Yu and felt that Su Yu, who was only in the realm of fairy, was unusually tall. I have my own way. You should catch up with the people and appease them. After Su Yu finished, he flashed into the belly of the Five Elements mountain. The black and white dust fairies were surprised. Knowing that the Five Elements mountain was a dead end, why did he still go in? However, the powerful breath of the Central Prefecture's king was rushing over. The two's expressions changed, and they regretfully looked at the Five Elements mountain and stomped away. Swish, after they left, the Central Prefecture's king appeared and looked puzzled. They can survive under the divine fire, which is unexpected. Well, it must be some kind of escape plan. For their life and death, the Central Prefecture's king does not care. What he cares about is Su Yu's life and death. With a cold glance, the Central Prefecture's king looked at the belly of the Five Elements mountain and said lightly, "It's really desperate," and they actually went inside. The luxurious royal robe fluttered, and the Central Prefecture's king came to the cave. Along the way, he could clearly perceive the breath left by Su Yu, and even he could perceive the depths of the mountain, Su Yu's active vitality. The Central Prefecture's king was indifferent, and he continued to go deeper and deeper. The power of the Five Elements was nothing to him. It was not until he reached the depths that he finally used the power of the Dust Fairy. When he came to the end that the Dust Fairy could reach, he saw Su Yu. Su Yu turned his back to the barrier and looked at the youth in the royal robe in front of him. Since Su Yu came to the Jojo continent, they were destined to fight to the death. However, this was the first time they really faced each other. Su Yu looked at him, and he was also looking at Su Yu, looking down on him. "We finally meet, Inu Su Yuxian, Su Yu," the Central Prefecture's king said indifferently, and there was no emotion on his face. Su Yu said lightly, "Well, we finally meet, the good apprentice of Shin Yichen." The Central Prefecture's king's face was still indifferent, and he didn't care about being known by others. He was stubborn, and he deserved to die. The Central Prefecture's king shook his head indifferently, and there was no regret on his face. "If I can do it again, I will still kill him without hesitation, just like I killed you without hesitation today." A sharp light shot out from his pupils, and in an instant, the space around Su Yu was locked. Before waiting for him to take action, a huge palm appeared in the sky, gently brushed by, and Su Yu's space shackles were broken. The peak of the pure divine decree, not bad. The Central Prefecture's king shook his head indifferently. "Unfortunately, it still can't change your fate." With his black hair flying gently, the Central Prefecture's king was surrounded by a powerful aura, and a group of golden flames slowly overflowed from his body. "The divine nine-dragon cauldron, you don't deserve it. Give it to me, and you can use its true brilliance." The Central Prefecture's king looked at Su Yu indifferently, and the overflowing divine flames turned into sharp arrows, shooting at Su Yu. Chapter 1106. "Time freeze," Su Yu said softly. The purple dragon entangled the Central Prefecture's king invisibly. However, the Central Prefecture's king reached out a finger without any hindrance, and a trace of divine fire came out. With pity and indifference, he said, "The 9 heaven-defying rules of the divine nine-dragon cauldron, you have only mastered a little bit." With a flip of his palm, the purple dragon entangled the Central Prefecture's king was forcibly broken and bounced back. Time freeze was ineffective. "Space vortex," Su Yu said again. The Central Prefecture's king shook his head and did not look at it. He slapped the vortex behind him with a backhand. "I said, you have only mastered a little bit. The divine nine-dragon cauldron in your hands is equivalent to a reckless waste of natural resources." In the face of the approaching divine fire, Su Yu's left and right eyes rotated 3 colors at the same time. Red, purple, white. "So, what about this trick?" Su Yu's eyes were blurred, shaped like a rainbow, extraordinarily magnificent, alternate time and space. Time, space, soul, 3 kinds of power merged into one, turned into a 3-color chain, like the rules of heaven and earth, and surrounded the Central Prefecture's king. The indifferent expression of the Central Prefecture's king finally showed a hint of surprise, and a hint of indistinct anxiety appeared on his face. This trick was created by Su Yu by imitating the day when the divine nine-dragon cauldron descended and sealed the evil god. This seal, at the same time, sealed time, space, and soul, was equivalent to banishing in the space and time. Even the thinking was banished. Break! The Central Prefecture's king whispered, trying to break the alternate time and space, but only a crack was left. Even so, the mortal fairy's strength that leaked out from the cracks caused Su Yu's physical body, who was close at hand, to crack. Numerous hideous cracks appeared on his body, and his physical body was almost destroyed. The two of them were not at the same level before. Even though the Central Prefecture's king had great power, he could not break away and fell into the alternate time and space, unable to move. Only a breath of time, Su Yu said secretly. It was very difficult for Su Yu to control three kinds of power at the same time, and he could only seal it for a breath of time. 3 suns sword formation. He shouted without thinking, and the 3 heavenly orchid silver bamboo swords that had been prepared appeared through the void. The 3 swords turned into 3 streams of light and pierced through the Central Prefecture's king's body several times in a short period of time. 6 bloody holes were left on his body. The power of the different time and space dissipated, and the Central Prefecture's king seemed to have lost a breath of time and space. In one breath, he only saw that he was sealed, and in the next breath, there were 6 more bloody holes on his body. The silver sword chi in the bloody hole was invincible and quickly entered his body. However, the first reaction of the Central Prefecture's king was not to get rid of the sword energy, but to attack Su Yu without any hesitation. This palm contained the strength of a peak mortal fairy. In this world, apart from the glittering jewel mortal fairy, no one could resist it. He was fast, but someone was faster. 5 elements divine prison. A small 5-colored tower flew out of Su Yu's chest and teleported to the head of the Central Prefecture's king. From the bottom of the pagoda, a 5-colored radiance was set up, containing the extremely powerful power of the 5 elements. Its power was very similar to the isolating barrier behind Su Yu. Both of them were the ultimate power of the 5 elements that mortal fairies couldn't break. The Central Prefecture's king had no choice but to withdraw his palm. He patted the top of his head and asked coldly, "What is this?" He wanted to break the shackles of the power of the 5 elements, but the strength of the power of the 5 elements was extremely amazing. The Central Prefecture's king felt that his body was pressed by something and gradually lost the power to resist. At the same time, the 5 elements' divine prison continued to expand until it was 3 feet in size. It slowly fell on the head of the Central Prefecture's king. With the power of the 5 elements' divine prison, it should have pressed the enemy to the ground and made him unable to move. However, the Central Prefecture's king didn't even frown, and his body was motionless. Even though the power of the 5 elements' divine prison was unparalleled, it couldn't do anything to the Central Prefecture's king. A black-green water dragon poked his head out of the 5 elements' divine prison, and his face changed dramatically. "Boy, he is strange. I am afraid the 5 elements' divine prison can't hold him for too long. He can't move now. You should find a way to get rid of him." Su Yu's eyes were fierce, and he shouted softly. A dark sun appeared in each of his palms, exuding the breath of the tribulation of Thunder Feather. His palms were like dragons, and they were printed on the chest of the Central Prefecture's king. The royal robe on his body was turned into ashes by the tribulation thunder. However, the body of the Central Prefecture's king that was exposed surprised Su Yu. Below the neck of the Central Prefecture's king, where was the human body? It was clearly the body of the demon race. "You are not a human race." Su Yu was shocked. This was not the appearance of the human race transformed into the appearance of the demon race, but born this way. The secret that Xin Yichen and Linlang didn't know has finally been discovered. The Central Prefecture's king said indifferently, I am the descendant of the human god and the demon god, and I am the descendant of the gods. The breath of the tribulation of Thunder Feather can't kill me. Chi, the breath of the tribulation of Thunder Feather that Su Yu printed on his chest really couldn't shake his body. The descendant of the gods. Su Yu was shocked. How could he not know that if the descendants of the gods became gods, they must go through the real 39 tribulations and accept the baptism of the divine tribulation? Staring at the faintly discernible divine fire in his pores, Su Yu had a thought that even he could not believe. Could it be that he had tried to break through the realm of the gods? Even if I failed to break through the gods, you still can't kill me. The Central Prefecture's king indifferently said more amazing news. He really tried to cross the divine tribulation, even if he failed. It was no wonder that he had the divine fire and could survive the divine tribulation. Even if he failed, he could get the corresponding benefit. The control of the divine fire was the benefit of the Central Prefecture's king. Give me the divine nine-dragon cauldron, so that I can make up for the sequelae of the failure of crossing the tribulations and re-attack the god position. So, you deserve to die. The Central Prefecture's king looked at Su Yu and said indifferently. Su Yu's scalp was numb. The enemy he faced was only one step away from achieving the god position. With a low shout, Su Yu used all the skills he had learned in his life. However, no matter what kind of moves fell on the body of the descendant of the Central Prefecture's king, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. After half an hour, the Central Prefecture's king was unscathed, but his eyes became colder and colder. You have half a day. After half a day, I will take your life and take back the divine nine-dragon cauldron. After saying that, he simply closed his eyes and silently waited for the time when the five elements' divine prison could not suppress him. Su Yu stopped and no longer attacked fearlessly. The gap between the two could not be made up by ordinary method. There was only one way to go about it. Taking a breath, Su Yu solemnly took out an ancient silver longbow, carved with flying dragons and the sun and moon. The material was extremely ordinary. The lowest level of martial artists in the Jiuzhou continent would be dismissive of this silver bow. However, after taking out this bow, the Central Prefecture's king, who closed his eyes, seemed to notice something. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked horrified. His pupils were constantly flickering, with panic, shock, and even deep fear. Staring at the silver bow for a long time, the indifferent face of the Central Prefecture's king had a more gloomy color. He really gave the celestial destroying arrow to you. No wonder for so many years, I have searched all over the Central Prefecture, but I have not found this arrow. It turned out that it was taken away by him. Celestial destroying arrow? Su Yu clenched his 5 fingers, and the silver bow could not withstand the huge force and was broken. As the fragments peeled off, there was only a feather arrow shining with golden light in Su Yu's palm. The material was neither gold nor wood. The texture was smooth and gentle, exuding a faint golden light. In the arrow there is a will of destruction. Su Yu just touched it with his palm, and the will of destruction rushed into the soul along the palm. The royal power cloak was vulnerable and turned into pieces. The will of destruction went straight to the depths of the soul, trying to destroy the soul. When Su Yu realized that something was wrong, it was too late. Dong! Fortunately, with a muffled sound, the divine nine-dragon cauldron blocked the invading will of destruction. Su Yu's face was pale, and he immediately put down the golden arrow in his palm. It is worthy of the divine nine-dragon cauldron, which can easily block the will of destruction of the celestial destroying arrow. The Central Prefecture's king seemed to have expected it and said lightly. Su Yu was shocked. The celestial destroying arrow was not an arrow that he could hold. How could he exert its power? It could be seen that the Central Prefecture's king was extremely afraid of this arrow, but he was not afraid of Su Yu mastering this arrow. Shinichen pinned the hope of revenge on you. It is a pity that you and I met too early. If you have the realm of the Peak Dust Fairy, I may have to flee. As for now, you can't even hold the arrow. The Central Prefecture's king said with a faint smile. I got the Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron and the Celestial Destroying Arrow. If I don't get these two things now, won't I be disappointed? Human. Demon. Change. The suppressed Central Prefecture's king suddenly whispered, and his whole body swelled rapidly from the length of a normal human being. 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, when he reached the top of the cave, he could no longer expand, and his body reached a height of 1,000 feet. In front of him, Suyu was as small as a real ant. The 5-element divine prison that was suppressing him was like a grain of sand, on the verge of collapse. No, he reversed his meridians and transformed into a demon body, and his power soared. I can't suppress him anymore. Run away. The black-green water dragon's face changed dramatically. As a demon god, it naturally knew the existence of the descendants of the human god and the demon god. It was said that the descendants of the human god and the demon god were born to be able to change between human and demon. Every time they changed, their power would increase. Although the price was not small, more than 1/3 of their lifespan would be sacrificed. It was the supreme way to save their lives in a critical moment. Hearing this, Suyu was also nervous. Still want to leave? Where can you go? The Central Prefecture's king's body shook violently, and the 5 elements divine prison above his head was finally shaken and fell near Suyu. At this moment, behind Suyu was the barrier that the Central Prefecture's king did not dare to cross, and in front of him was the giant incarnation of the demon god. He seemed to have entered a dead end and became a turtle in a jar. Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron, give it to me. The Central Prefecture's king was indifferent, and his huge palm was like a mountain upside down. The space around Suyu collapsed, and he was like a small boat in a tsunami, which could capsize at any time and be buried in the turbulence of space. Brat, you've harmed this god. The black-green water dragon was furious. When Suyu escaped here, he felt something was wrong, and the result was just as he expected. Shut up. Block this blow. Suyu was calm, and he turned to stare at the barrier behind him. His eyes crossed the barrier and stared at the deepest part of the dark area. Gang Dalei, I hope your appearance is not accidental, Suyu murmured. I also hope that my guess is not wrong. Time acceleration. Suyu suddenly roared, and under the boiling of his blood, he accelerated the time. His figure suddenly became blurred, and he rushed to the barrier in front of him. Chapter 1107. You are courting death. The power of the 5 elements inside is enough to suppress the gods. What's the use of being fast? No matter how fast you are, can you be faster than God? The black-green water dragon was anxious. In his opinion, Suyu was desperate and wanted to break into the belly of the 5 elements mountain. He knew the power of the 5 elements mountain very well. If he went one step further, it would be impossible for the creatures of the mortal world to set foot in. While roaring, the black-green water dragon controlled the 5 elements' divine prison to resist the palm that was pressing down rapidly. Suyu said calmly, speed only saves time. If I want to enter the belly of the mountain, I need to find another way. Above the sky, a huge round eye appeared, covering a radius of 100,000 miles. From the huge eye, infinite purple light shot out, covering the whole 5 elements mountain tightly. Time freeze. The giant eye integrated by the divine path could launch another time freeze. This time, the target was the whole 5 elements mountain. In an instant, the power of the 5 elements flowing in the 5 elements mountain was frozen by the power of time and stopped flowing. Suyu's eyes flashed. He held the 5 elements divine prison in his left hand and the celestial destroying arrow in his right hand. At the moment when the giant palm was about to grab him, he quickly stepped forward. Sure enough, the power of the 5 elements stopped flowing. Suyu stepped into the depths, and the power of the 5 elements couldn't fall on Suyu. The black-green water dragon was anxious. "Silly boy, run out of the cave. What can you do if you go deep into the cave? When the power of time is gone, you will still die." Suyu was a little nervous, but his mind was very clear. Running out of the cave is the real dead end. I can't outrun the Central Prefecture's king. In the cave, if I guess right, there should be a glimmer of hope. Swish, with 10 times the speed, Suyu almost teleported. When the power of the 5 elements was frozen, he quickly entered the deepest part of the dark cave. 3 breaths. Suyu stopped in the deepest part of the cave. It was dark here, and there was only a bright formation, which was constantly flashing. Seeing the formation, the black-green water dragon couldn't help but be overjoyed. The divine level transmission formation? How is this possible? There were only 9 divine level transmission formations in the 9 prefectures, which connected the 9 prefectures of the continent. But who could have predicted that there was a 10th divine level teleportation portal hidden in the 5 elements mountain? Suyu heaved a sigh of relief and revealed a gratified smile. My guess was right. There must be a transportation portal in the deepest part of the mountain. Otherwise, there is no other explanation for Gang Daliai's skeleton appearing in the deepest part of the 5 elements mountain, where even mortal fairies cannot enter. There must be a passageway connecting to the outside world in the deepest part of the mountain. When Suyu saw Gang Daliai, he already had such a guess. Now that he had taken the risk, he was right to test it out. Without another word, Suyu jumped onto the divine level transportation portal, placed a few crystals, and immediately activated the portal. This divine level transportation portal was a fixed transportation portal that could only transport people to one place. As for where it was, Suyu couldn't predict. After everything was done, there were still 3 breaths left. It was just about time for the array formation to finish activating. Looking out again, Suyu could see the Central Prefecture's king in the darkness, but he couldn't see the details of the depths of the cave. The Central Prefecture's king stood in front of the barrier and hesitated. He didn't dare to step in for fear that it was a trap set by Suyu. Suyu calmed down a little. There were only 2 breaths left. Even if the Central Prefecture's king reacted, it would be too late. It was only then that Suyu started to size up his surroundings. He really did discover some unusual objects. In the corner, there was a snow-white skeleton sitting cross-legged. It was not a human, but a flood dragon. Its lower limbs were sitting cross-legged like a human, and its upper limbs were making seals. A long flood dragon tail was wrapped around its waist. From the skeleton, Suyu sensed the remnant aura of a deity. Just by looking at it, Suyu had the urge to worship it. Another skeleton of a demon god? Suyu's eyes dimmed. A demon god was killed under the 5 Elements Mountain, and there was another one in the 5 Elements Mountain. He glanced at the 5 Elements divine prison quietly and found that the black-green flood dragon had returned to the tower. A glimmer of light flashed quietly. After 2 breaths, the divine level transportation portal was activated. Huge space fluctuations radiated. The Central Prefecture's king, who was standing outside the barrier, noticed it and was about to rush into the depths of the mountain immediately. At the same time, the enormous power of 5 elements started to flow again, which forced the Central Prefecture's king, who was half a step away. With a groan, the Central Prefecture's king was slightly injured. Annoyed, he didn't expect there was a divine-level transportation portal in the belly of the 5 Elements Mountain. The prey that was already in his grasp had actually escaped just like that. Fine, let's see where you can escape to. The Central Prefecture's king was determined to get it. In the Huitian Prefecture, Dongfang Yu was randomly transported to the space above a super-transportation portal in a prosperous city in this prefecture. Such a huge space fluctuation would definitely attract strong people. She had been prepared for that. However, the strong person who attracted this time was a little special. It was an old man in white. Dongfang Yu recognized him, and couldn't help but cry out in surprise, "Are you the former region master of the Heavenly Knife region?" As the direct descendant of the great Oriental family, Dongfang Yu knew much more about the continent than ordinary people. She even knew the information of a faction leader, let alone a region master. Dongfang Yu recognized the old man in front of her was the former region master of the Heavenly Knife region. However, why did the region master of the Central Prefecture appear in the Huitian Prefecture? Oh? A descendant of the demonic god with a bloodline purity of level 2? What an unexpected discovery! The old region master touched his chin and saw through Dongfang Yu's bloodline. Dongfang Yu was shocked. In the Jiuzhou continent, there were people who knew the great Oriental family was the descendant of the demonic god. However, only the two patriarchs knew about the bloodline purity of the demonic god. What was wrong with the old region master? "Senior, I didn't mean to disturb you. I'm leaving now." Dongfang Yu knew something was wrong. She pretended to be calm and was about to leave. However, as soon as she moved, she was bound by the power of space. The cold voice of the old region master came into her ears. "Demonic god Desire Sin, do you want to escape? I'm going to kill you." Dongfang Yu was surprised. Killing demonic god Desire Sin? Does the region master of the Central Prefecture have such a strange responsibility? Dongfang Yu sensed the old region master's killing intent. "Tell me, how many of you are left? Where are you? Don't force me to torture you!" The old region master shouted. Dongfang Yu was very intelligent. She answered smoothly, "Senior, please calm down. My clansmen have escaped to the Central Prefecture." "The Central Prefecture? Where I came from?" the old region master murmured. After a while, he nodded his head. "Okay, lead the way. I can't catch that cunning female demonic god, but I can catch you demonic god Desire Sin, which is not a total loss." There were two reasons why Dongfang Yu led him to the Central Prefecture. First, the people of the Dongfang clan had been transported to this place. If she didn't lead him away, who could defeat him? Second, the Central Prefecture city was occupied by the Ghost Clan. It was a good idea to drive the wolf to devour the tiger. "Okay, lead the way," the old region master shouted coldly. After an hour of dizziness, Su Yu finally crossed several prefectures and was transported to a place by the divine level transportation device. Su Yu sensed around and was surprised. "Is this the Central Prefecture?" With a thought, he opened his eyes and looked around. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of a city that was not very grand. It was just a small city in the Jiuzhou continent. However, Su Yu was excited by the aura coming from the city. The creatures of the Zhenlong continent? Su Yu took a deep breath with excitement in his eyes. The appearance of Gang Dalei was not a coincidence. Did he lead us to this place by using the transportation device? Su Yu confirmed his speculation. Looking at the city in front of him that was brimming with life, Su Yu's heart, which had been hanging in the air all this while, finally relaxed a little. It seemed the creatures of the Jiuzhou continent were not in danger. But why did Gang Dalei lose his body? When he arrived at the foot of the city, Su Yu didn't dare to enter the city. He was not ready to meet the people of the Zhenlong continent yet. Maybe it was called the feeling of homesickness. "Who are you? Why are you lingering in the Zhenlong city?" A strong general at the fairy realm shouted as he stood on the city wall. Su Yu looked up and found this man was quite strange. However, he had the unique aura of the Zhenlong continent. "I haven't seen him for several years. Does it mean a new fairy realm expert has appeared?" "I am." When Su Yu was about to speak, the general changed his expression abruptly. "A grade 9 fairy? Oh no. Inform Vice City Master Jiu. Maybe the Beiming City didn't give up and sent more experts to attack us." After saying that, the general crushed a jade pendant for messaging. Several fairy realm experts flew out of the city wall and stared at Su Yu as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Su Yu was a bit embarrassed. Did no one recognize him after he left the city for such a long time? Moreover, Elder Gio became the vice city master. Heh, heh. Will he still drink wine like before? Who dares to behave atrociously in the Zhenlong city? Along with a stern shout, an old man in a Taoist robe rushed over as fast as lightning. His strong smell of alcohol could be smelled even from several miles away. However, when the old man approached Su Yu and stared at the intruder, he was stunned a bit. Then, he laughed angrily. Does Beiming City think I am a fool? Elder Gio was not happy to see Su Yu. Instead, he became more angry and started to attack Su Yu angrily. Su Yu was speechless. What's going on? Su Yu was quite surprised to see Elder Gio had reached the peak of the Grade 9 fairy realm after several years. Facing the incoming attack, Su Yu casually extended his palm and suppressed the vital energy erupting from his whole body back into his body. He then placed his palm on his shoulder and said with a bitter smile, "It's me, Su Yu." Elder Jiu changed his expression greatly. Then, he shouted angrily, "Oh no! Inform the city master. This man is an almighty divine master." "What? An almighty divine master?" The soldiers on the city wall turned pale immediately. Then, they tried to inform the city master again. Blue veins were bulging on Su Yu's forehead. "Elder Jiu, it's me. Are you crazy?" To his surprise, Elder Jiu scolded Su Yu loudly with the smell of alcohol in his mouth. "I know it's you, the city master of the Beiming city. Why did you use the same trick again?" "Using the same trick again?" Su Yu was surprised. Then, he looked at the city wall and sensed a familiar aura rushing over. Chapter 1108. Gradually, his anxiety was replaced by ecstasy. Then, he flew down and said in surprise, "Su Yu, you really came back." Elder Jiu was stunned. Then, he said suspiciously, "King of Darkness, don't be fooled. The city master of Beiming City is proficient in disguise. He can even imitate the aura of others." The black-robed man was the King of Darkness. He stared at Su Yu excitedly and said, "No, the aura can be imitated, but the celestial destroying arrow given to him by Lord Shen Yichen can't be fake. He is Su Yu. Su Yu is back." Elder Jiu's face froze. Then, he stared at Su Yu with his eyes wide open and his lips trembled. "Are you really Su Yu?" Su Yu let go of him and said with a wry smile, "I didn't expect to be treated as an enemy by you." Elder Jiu was ecstatic. Then, he hugged Su Yu and said with tears in his eyes, "Little brat, it's really you. I missed you so much." "You missed my baby, right?" "Nonsense. You and I are like old friends. I was so worried about you." "Then, where are you touching?" Elder Jiu withdrew his hand, which was stroking Su Yu's waist. He had intended to take a storage bag or something, but he had been seen through by Su Yu. Elder Jiu laughed dryly, revealing his yellow teeth. Su Yu knew it was a joke between him and Elder Jiu. So, he felt very close to him. Su Yu felt a sense of security which he hadn't felt for a long time. Looking at Elder Jiu and the King of Darkness, Su Yu said with a smile, "I am back." The word "come back" made the two of them beam with joy. Their gloomy and sorrowful faces were filled with joy. "It's great that you are back." Elder Jiu's eyes became wet as if he was looking at his own child. Then, he touched Su Yu's head with his old hand. Su Yu didn't dodge. Instead, he looked up and asked, "Elder Jiu, where is Dalei? Why can't I sense his aura?" Hearing that, Elder Jiu and the King of Darkness were stunned. Then, their joyful expressions were replaced by anger and sadness. "Dalei, he," Elder Jiu said in a trembling voice as he struggled with his hands and palms, "he is dead." Su Yu's eyes were calm. He was really dead. The seemingly honest but cunning young man. How did he die? Su Yu clenched his fist. Elder Jiu looked at Su Yu and hesitated. The King of Darkness also avoided Su Yu's gaze. "Is it because of me?" Su Yu asked. The King of Darkness sighed, "Yes. Ever since we moved here, we have been recuperating. With the resources you sent over and the abundant spiritual qi in the 9 states, everyone's cultivation has improved by leaps and bounds. However, there are conflicts everywhere in Jianghu. As outsiders, we have opened up a city here and occupied the resources, so it is inevitable that we will have conflicts with the surrounding forces. The Beiming city is one of the most violent. The Beiming city gathered the experts in the city many times to attack the Zhenlong city. Although the Zhenlong city was slightly weaker, we were united after the destruction of the Zhenlong continent. They couldn't do anything to us. Half a year ago you came back suddenly. The whole city celebrated and led us to attack the Beiming city. In the end, of course, that Su Yu suddenly betrayed them and led them into a trap that had been set long ago. We suffered a great loss in that battle. Many of our old friends were killed in it. The Undead Phoenix Master Qiu Ningshui, the Heavenly Law Alliance Master Long Juexin, the Equipment Forging Master Lin Yunhe, and the Phoenix Cabinet Master all died in that battle. Dalai was killed in that battle. Su Yu's heart missed a beat when he heard the Phoenix Cabinet Master, the woman who had slept with him, was killed in that battle. Who else died? Su Yu asked seriously. The King of Darkness said shamefully, Zi Donglai also died. His daughter, Zi Yunxiang, was ambushed and killed. And Yuro and her apprentice, even they and Yuro and Mo Wu were both women who had slept with Su Yu. How could they be separated from each other in just a few years? Although Su Yu felt guilty, he was quite calm. Then, he said in a low voice, did they leave anything that was contaminated by the aura of the Zhenlong continent? The King of Darkness and Elder Jiu sensed Su Yu's anger. So, they also sighed in their hearts. More than half of his old friends in the Zhenlong continent were killed in that battle. How could he not be angry? Yes, they left in a hurry during that battle. They didn't have time to collect their belongings. All of those belongings were buried in the empty graves. Everyone has them, the King of Darkness said. Su Yu said by nodding his head slightly, tell them to take out those belongings. Death was not scary. What was scary was that no aura was left in this world. Elder Jiu and Elder Jiu were confused. However, they still followed Su Yu's order. How many experts are there in the Beiming city? Su Yu asked calmly. The King of Darkness said seriously, there are 80 experts who are above the almighty level. The most powerful one is the City Master, Bai Chonghuan, who is a level 8 almighty. Their overall strength is on par with our Zhenlong city. At least, they were on par with us half a year ago. Is there any obstacle for us to destroy the Beiming city? Su Yu asked another question. Destroy the city? The King of Darkness's heart skipped a beat. Then, he said bitterly, it's quite difficult. The city here is under the control of a local superfamily, which has an all-creation old monster. They won't stand by and watch the city being destroyed. Su Yu said coldly, the Beiming city has attacked Zhenlong city many times. Don't tell me they don't want to destroy this city? That's because we don't pay tribute to this family, the King of Darkness said with a wry smile. Every place had its own rules. In the territory of this family, they had to obey the rules of this place. What do you mean by paying tribute to them? Su Yu frowned. The King of Darkness was a sensible man. Why didn't he pay tribute to them in order to avoid unnecessary disasters? The King of Darkness said as he clenched his fists, they want to pay tribute to 1,000 young girls who are above the half-god realm, 300,000 crystals, and various materials every year. Our new city has just been established, so we don't have so many resources. Even if we do, we can't pay tribute to the people of the Zhenlong city who have been sacrificed in the past. Pay tribute to young girls? Does this family practice the yin-yang secret technique? Su Yu's eyes turned cold. The King of Darkness said, exactly. All the cities under our territory offer tribute to them on time. Only our Zhenlong city refuses to pay tribute to them. That's why we are in such a miserable situation. They only allow other cities to attack us. Once we try to fight back, we will be warned by the family immediately. Elder Jiu and I tried to fight back. However, we were severely injured by them. We tried to move our city again. However, the result was the same. Once we tried to move our city, the family would stop us. They even threatened us that they would have the right to kill us if we moved our city. Hearing that, Suyu was quite calm. So, don't be impulsive. We have to lower our heads when we are under the eaves. We need to make a long-term plan. Elder Jiu said sincerely after a deep sigh. Judging from their words, Suyu knew they were not familiar with the news of the continent. Otherwise, they wouldn't have worried about a small Beiming city and a family. Suyu said by nodding his head, "Right? I am not an impulsive person. Don't worry." After saying that, Suyu waved his hand to summon Xinggu from the 9 jade spiritual pearl. Elder Jiu frowned when he saw Xinggu, a little devil from the dragon abyss of the 9 underworlds. You are lucky to be taken in by Suyu. Otherwise, humph. Undoubtedly, if Suyu hadn't taken her in, she would have been killed by Elder Jiu. Xinggu sneered as she revealed a strand of the aura of a level 9 divine master. Otherwise what? The King of Darkness, who was standing beside her, changed his expression abruptly. Then, he stepped back with Elder Jiu in terror as he said, "A level 9. Divine Master." Upon hearing this, Elder Jiu's face was filled with shock. "You are a 9th grade Almighty?" This little devil was just a level 2 fairy. How could she become a level 9 divine master in such a short time? Suyu, get out of my way. This little devil is quite weird. Elder Jiu realized Suyu was standing beside the little devil now. However, the next moment, Xinggu rolled her eyes at them. Then, she bowed to Suyu and asked, "Master, what can I do for you?" Suyu said calmly, "Destroy the Beiming city." Xinggu replied without hesitation, "Yes, Master." Suyu raised his head and said as he looked at the King of Darkness, "You go with her. Kill all the people who attacked the Beiming city, especially those who participated in the ambush. As for the rest of the people in the Beiming city, I will spare their lives if they surrender to Zhenlong city." "What if they don't surrender?" Xinggu asked excitedly. She hadn't seen blood for a long time. She hadn't used her full strength since she reached the level 9 Divine Master realm. Suyu said calmly, "Kill them all. Some of the people who didn't surrender must hate Zhenlong city. So, it was better to kill them for the long-term stability of Zhenlong city." At the same time, Suyu waved his hand again. Then, a silver puppet appeared. "Master, what can I do for you?" "Help Xinggu to destroy the city. You don't need to attack her. You just need to make sure no one escapes." The silver puppet could transform into billions of blood threads, so it was quite easy for it to encircle a small city. "Yes, Master," the silver puppet said as he licked his lips. His body was broken by Suyu last time and hadn't recovered yet. Now, he could use this opportunity to heal his wounds by devouring the blood and flesh of some creatures. In addition, Suyu paused for a while. Then, he said coldly, "After destroying the city, you should go there alone. Right? The King of Darkness will accompany you. There is a so-called family there. You can destroy it conveniently. There is an all-creation old monster in that family. Leave his soul here. You can devour his blood and flesh yourself." Hearing that, the silver puppet was overjoyed. Suyu had been controlling it intentionally to prevent it from devouring too much blood and flesh. Now it was finally released. The King of Darkness and Old Wine were like ducks listening to thunder. They were stunned and didn't blink their eyes. Suyu kept mentioning the annihilation of cities and families. He seemed to be talking about something as trivial as this. However, when they heard it, it was earth-shattering. Suyu, what is the cultivation of that senior?" The King of Darkness stared at the silver puppet as he sensed an aura from the silver puppet. He had only sensed such an aura from one person, the Blood Emperor. The Blood Emperor, who had destroyed the Zhenlong continent in the past. At this moment, the Overlord's mood was like AF** King Dog. Yesterday, I was like a little magpie and excitedly revealed my plan for the next few days. As a result, the entire book's comments were filled with boos, saying that I, the Overlord, was bragging and that my credibility was zero. There was even a tycoon who made a bet that he would tip me 300,000 for every 30 chapters. After I, the Overlord, finished reading the comments with a dark expression, his face instantly turned from a magpie to a black crow. Damn it! How bad is my image? Isn't it just 30 chapters? The Overlord was not motivated before, so he didn't try his best. If he really tried his best, 30 chapters would be nothing. Chapter 1109. All Creations Stage 3? You can't keep up with my needs anymore. Well, you will stay in the Zhenlong City as a guardian from now on, Suyu said calmly. The silver puppet replied, Yes, master. He was quite satisfied with this decision. Without Suyu's restriction, he could devour anyone who dared to invade the Zhenlong City to strengthen himself. Third, All Creation Stage 3? The King of Darkness and Elder Gio's hearts shuddered, and their lips shivered. Alright, go quickly and come back quickly. I won't be staying for long. Suyu waved his sleeves, and Xinggu and the silver puppet took the King of Darkness and left through the void. Elder Gio was dumbfounded as he looked at the pitch-black fissure, which was gradually closing up. His mouth was wide open, and he couldn't calm his shock for a long time. Then, Suyu's words reached his ears. Take me to see my old friend. It was only then that Elder Gio came back to his senses, and he looked at Suyu with a completely different gaze. Now, his gaze was filled with reverence as he said cautiously, Okay. The news of Suyu's return was undoubtedly a shocking piece of good news that shook the entire city. This time, with Elder Gio's guarantee, it was confirmed that it was indeed Suyu. This caused an even greater commotion, and all of the city's residents came to see him. They had received Suyu's favor and had come to Jiuzhou from the Zhenlong continent. Not only had their lives been saved, but they had also come to such a vast and boundless world. Now that the spiritual pillar of the Zhenlong continent, the former true Dragon King, had returned, how could they not be excited? However, Suyu only showed his face once before leaving many people with deep regret. In a fragrant tea-house, Suyu sat across from a few old acquaintances. Qin Zhiyang Wuoyue, Princess Yunyan, and the Duke of Xianyu. They were all Suyu's old friends, and two of the women had even slept with Suyu for a night. Qin Zhiyang had experienced many things in the past, and he had matured a lot. His cultivation had also reached the level 8 fairy realm, and he had almost caught up with the Elder Gio. He was unique among the real dragons, and he could be considered an apex genius. At that moment, he was humbly asking Suyu for advice on his cultivation. Suyu patiently instructed them one by one. Wu Aoyue and Princess Yunyan looked at Suyu with different expressions. After not seeing him for so many years, he had matured and was no longer the youth of the past. As the years passed, the only thing left was the sorrow of parting. They were no longer as shy as they were back then. They had also learned to be calm, quietly and admiringly sizing up this man of their past. The mood in the room was different, but the atmosphere was harmonious. Young master, have you decided to stay in the Zhenlong continent? Wu Aoyue was the one who was most concerned about Xingge. She wanted to stay by Suyu's side so that she could make greater progress. It was as if he had been reborn. She regretted not following Suyu and escaping from the Central Prefecture's king's pursuit. I won't stay for long. Suyu could tell what she was thinking, so he declined politely. I have already left behind many resources. If they are used properly, it won't be a problem for those with exceptional talents to break through to the almighty level. With the resources in the glittering jewel wonderland, even 1% of it would be enough for the entire Zhenlong city to change dramatically. Moreover, he had left 1/10 of it for himself, which was a fortune that none of the region masters could compare with. You're leaving now? The one who spoke was Princess Yunyan. Without the halo of a young girl, she looked even more graceful and charming. She said softly, "You must take care of yourself." After saying that, she stood up obediently and said goodbye to Su Yu gracefully like a butterfly. Wu Aoyue also left. Now, only Su Yu, Elder Jiu and the Duke of Xianyu were left in the room. Elder Jiu, I was in the blessed and heavenly lands these years. I couldn't come here in person. I am sorry that you have suffered a lot. Su Yu said apologetically. If he had come here 1 year later, the Zhenlong city might have been destroyed by other forces. Don't say that. We all know you sent people to deliver resources to us. You still miss us. It's a pity that the messenger you sent was killed in the siege of the Baimian city. That's why we couldn't contact you earlier. Elder Jiu sighed. Su Yu understood now. Elder Liao also died. No wonder he didn't come back to contact Su Yu. Elder Liao found the Zhenlong city and brought Su Yu's resources, which was a great contribution. If his aura still exists in this world, Su Yu could also revive him. The resurrection technique could only be used once a day. It couldn't be used in a hurry. It's my selfishness that harmed you all. The Jiuzhou continent is so vast. We can settle down anywhere. I have been here before. That's why I suggested you to settle down here. Otherwise, my compatriots in the Zhenlong city wouldn't have been bullied. Su Yu asked in surprise, "You have been here before?" Elder Jiu said, "Yes. I was a guard of the central prefecture. I came to this city by accident while carrying out a mission. I found a baby in the ruins. I adopted the baby out of compassion. Since this was the baby's hometown, I didn't think too much about it and settled down here. However, this place is full of dangers and dangers. That's why we are here today." A baby? It should be Gang Dalei. I didn't expect the Zhenlong city would settle down here for such a reason. Alas. I won't disturb your reunion. I am going to pack up the remains of those kings. Elder Jiu sighed. After seeing Elder Jiu off, Su Yu went back to the tea room and sat opposite the Duke of Xianyu. "Father." Su Yu didn't say anything to the Duke of Xianyu. The Duke of Xianyu also stayed silent. He was waiting for Su Yu to speak. Hearing Su Yu call him father, the Duke of Xianyu was relieved. He looked at Su Yu with tears in his eyes and said, "You are back." After so many years, the Duke of Xianyu looked much older. Half of his hair and beard were white. His back was also hunched. Su Yu was stunned. After a while, he asked, "Where is Xian? Why didn't I see her?" The Duke of Xianyu sighed. "Xian lives alone outside the city. You should go and see her." "Lives alone? Does she feel ashamed to meet the Zhenlong?" "Father, Su Yu said apologetically. The Duke of Xianyu interrupted him and sighed. We live for one lifetime. Even though the life of a martial artist is long, there is the possibility of dying at any time. As a man, you should be decisive. Do not leave a lifetime of regret for yourself and others." After saying that, the Duke of Xianyu stood up and left the tea room with a sigh. Su Yu was left alone. People live only one life. Su Yu couldn't help but think of the words of the alluring cabinet mistress. The life of a martial artist was like that of an ant in the mortal world. Nobody knew whether he would see a dead person or a grave in the next moment. Amidst the silence, Su Yu's eyes brightened a little. Yes, there were some things that needed to be decided. Half a day later. Whoosh! The void cracked. The silver puppet, Xinggu and the King of Darkness returned. The silver puppet and Xinggu each carried a head in their hands. The latter was the head of the owner of the Baiming city. The former was the head of an all-creation old monster from a big family whose soul was sealed. The head of the owner of the Baiming city will be hung in the city for 3 days. The soul of this all-creation old monster will be kept under the city. When the Zhenlong city is willing to relocate, he will be released. Both of these actions were to deter the evildoers. Those who offended the Zhenlong city must be killed. No matter if they were divine masters or all-creation old monsters. Seeing this, the King of Darkness was so excited that he didn't know what to say. Su Yu's 2 slaves were so powerful that words couldn't describe them. This was especially true for the silver puppet. The ancestor of the Qin family, who was an all creation's old monster, didn't even have time to face it before his body was shattered by the silver puppet. His soul didn't even have time to escape before it was captured and brought back. The King of Darkness couldn't forget that horrible figure. However, he soon realized that Su Yu's slaves were so powerful. How powerful was Su Yu himself? Lord Su, if you leave, can we use your name to deter our enemies? The King of Darkness asked expectantly. After thinking for a while, Su Yu replied with a sigh, "Okay. I will announce to the world that the Zhenlong city is my hometown. Those who offend this city will be killed by me." At this moment, the voice of the evil god came into Su Yu's mind. "Hey little brat, you are being chased by the Central Prefecture's king. Aren't you afraid that he will threaten you with the Zhenlong city?" The evil god reminded Su Yu. Su Yu replied, "Doesn't the Central Prefecture's king know nothing about the Zhenlong continent? I don't think so." The glittering jeweled demonic god was far away in the blessed and heavenly land. How could the Central Prefecture's king not know anything about it? After a while, Elder Jiu brought the remains of the deceased to Su Yu. Sensing the auras of the Phoenix Cabinet Master, Zidonglai and his daughter, Anuro, Mo Wu, Lin Yunhe and Qiu Ningshui, Su Yu sighed in his heart. He felt sad and comforted at the same time. Their auras were still in this world. It wouldn't be difficult for him to resurrect one of them every day. When he glanced at the remains of Gang Dalei, a piece of broken armor, Su Yu was confused again. After talking with him, he confirmed that Gang Dalei had died. The life jade pendant left in the city was cracked, which indicated that his divine soul had been destroyed. However, Gang Dalei's remains in the 5 Elements mountain could move by themselves, which didn't make sense. Su Yu had a vague feeling that Gang Dalei's appearance was not that simple. There must be someone behind this. After getting those items, Su Yu knew it was time to bid farewell to the Zhenlong city. With the speed of the Central Prefecture's king, he would arrive there in half a day. He didn't want to attract the final battle here. Little White, if the city dies, the people die. If the city lives, the people will live. Su Yu turned around and said to the silver puppet. The silver puppet knelt down on one knee. Understood. After saying that, Su Yu looked at the King of Darkness and Elder Jiu. I will try to resurrect the deceased. Don't be too sad. The Zhenlong city needs to be developed urgently. The residents of the city also need you to settle down. Now it's up to you. You don't plan to stay here. The King of Darkness and Elder Jiu were surprised. Su Yu said with a smile, If I live, I will come back. Take good care of the Zhenlong city. Goodbye. Su Yu took a step forward and disappeared from the Zhenlong city. Then, he arrived at a nameless green mountain outside the city. A thatched cottage was looming in the mountains. During the past half a day, Su Yu had asked around. Since the residents of the Jiuzhou continent settled down here, Qin Xian'er moved to this mountain and stayed in seclusion all year round. She seldom went out. Even the Duke of Xianyu seldom saw her. Feeling guilty, Su Yu knocked on the door. The door was opened silently. Then, he saw the situation in the thatched cottage. Chapter 11:10. Brother Su Yu. Just as Su Yu was feeling bewildered, a crisp and melodious laughter came from behind him. Then, a pair of slender arms wrapped around his waist from behind. Su Yu's body shook. That voice belonged to Xian'er. When he turned his head to take a look, he saw Qin Xian'er, who was dressed in colorful clothes. She raised her beautiful face and looked at Su Yu without blinking. Her eyes were filled with tears of excitement and joy. Xian'er. Su Yu's throat seemed to be blocked by something. His heart was choked and he couldn't say a word. Silently turning around, Su Yu embraced the delicate and petite figure in front of him. After several years had passed, she had grown slightly taller, and her small head was now high enough to reach Su Yu's chin. Her body had also matured gradually, and the pair of soft and supple buns in front of her chest made it seem plump and smooth. Her legs had also become slender and tighter, which made her seem even more powerful. The greatest change was that the cute and charming little face of the past had become even more unique and exquisite, as if it was exquisitely carved. At first glance, it looked like a pure and hazy little fox immortal, and it was extremely lovable. However, a question flashed in Su Yu's mind. When did she become so powerful that she could evade my senses and appear behind me unknowingly and hug me? Su Yu's perception was amazing. The area within 30 feet of him was like a forbidden zone. It was impossible for someone to get within 30 feet of him without being detected, unless they were mortal fairies. However, this thought disappeared in a flash. His cultivation had become stronger in the past few years. As a disciple of Yun Yazi, he had the Death Phoenix constitution. How could it be strange for Sienner's cultivation to improve? He should be happy. His doubts disappeared. Su Yu hugged Sienner's petite body and stood in the yard, enjoying the warmth. "Brother Su Yu, I miss you very much. I miss you very much." Sienner hugged Su Yu tightly as if she wanted to melt into Su Yu's body. She was afraid that Su Yu would run away again. Su Yu was filled with guilt. He recalled the words of the Duke of Xianyu and the alluring cabinet master. His heart shuddered. There were some things that needed to be decided early. "Sienner, about Jingyu, I want to." Su Yu looked at Qin Sienner seriously and said with courage. Sienner put her finger on Su Yu's lips and said softly, "Now it belongs to you and me. I don't want to listen to anything else." Su Yu wanted to say something but hesitated. He sighed silently and hugged her delicate body tightly. The two of them embraced each other. Under the setting sun, under the blood-red dusk, they quietly stood on the mountain peak, letting the light mist brush over their bodies, letting the rosy clouds float over their heads. They only hugged like this for a long time. Heaven and earth were vast and vast, time and space were long. Their embrace seemed to last until the end of time, until the end of time, until the end of time, until the end of time. It was unknown when Sienner had closed her eyes in Su Yu's embrace, but after a short while, her snores, which sounded like that of a kitten, transmitted from her nose. It seemed that she hadn't slept so peacefully for a long time. Su Yu didn't disturb her. He carried her into the house and silently watched over her through the pitch-black night. He watched over her until the first ray of dawn pierced through the clouds and landed on him. As he looked at Sienner, who was sleeping soundly in his arms, Su Yu gently put her down and raised his head to look at the sky. The Central Prefecture's king was about to arrive on the 8th day of the tribulation of people. Su Yu gently put down Sienner's hands, which were hugging him, and kissed her forehead. His eyes were filled with tenderness and apology as he said, "I'm sorry, my dear Sienner. From now on, I won't be able to accompany you anymore, so I can only take advantage of your sleep to tell you what I didn't finish yesterday." "Sienner, I love you as much as I love Jingyu," Su Yu said with courage. "Could a person love two people at the same time?" Yes, but was it fair to the two of them? No. When Su Yu felt that the only person he loved was Xia Jingyu, he discovered that he couldn't forget that delicate and pitiful little girl, who needed someone to protect her. He knew he couldn't forget her for the rest of his life. Because while he loved Xia Jingyu, his wife, who was his responsibility, had occupied his heart and his love. However, for the sake of fairness, he didn't want to admit his feelings. Now the tribulation of people was coming. Judging from the previous fight, it was impossible for Su Yu to escape. Before his death, Su Yu was enlightened by the Duke of Xianyu. Life has only one life, grass and trees have 3 autumns. I don't want to leave regrets for myself or others. Therefore, he wanted to tell Sienner that he also selfishly divided his love into 2 halves. However, he didn't have a chance to say it. Let Sienner sleep. Yesterday's embrace was just a dream. Let her wait for Su Yu's death in her dream. After saying his thoughts, Su Yu walked to the hut and looked at her deeply. Then, he walked out of the hut and looked at the sky. The aura of the Central Prefecture's king was approaching. It was time to leave. Su Yu didn't look back as he took a step forward. Instead, he flew away from Siener. 2 hours passed. Su Yu didn't know where he was. This place was vast and barren. Standing in front of a long river, Su Yu wrapped the celestial destroying arrow with vital energy in his right hand. It seemed he was ready to fight with the Central Prefecture's king, even though it was a narrow escape. Crack! A deafening sound of space being torn apart echoed in Su Yu's ears. It was as if the world was being torn apart. In the crack, the aura of the Emperor rolled out. Let's end this boring chase. The figure of the Central Prefecture's king appeared and looked down at Su Yu indifferently. After being hindered for 5 days, the Central Prefecture's king chased Su Yu for 3 days. Really? If you wanted to kill me, you would have done it already. Are you afraid of the celestial destroying arrow in my hand? Su Yu drew a bow with his left hand and wrapped the celestial destroying arrow with vital energy in his right hand. Then, he put the arrow on the string and aimed at the Central Prefecture's king. The indifferent face of the Central Prefecture's king changed slightly. The muscles at the corners of his mouth twitched slightly and his pupils shrank slightly. Obviously, even though Su Yu couldn't exert the full power of the celestial destroying arrow, it was still very threatening. Even if I am injured, I will kill you. The divine 9-dragon cauldron is the key for me to become a god. You have taken it from me for too long. The Central Prefecture's king was determined to get the cauldron even if he was injured by the celestial destroying arrow. The two of them confronted each other. The situation was extremely unfavorable for Su Yu. However, the Central Prefecture's king didn't attack Su Yu immediately because he didn't want to be injured by the celestial destroying arrow. Suddenly, Su Yu frowned. His face was gradually covered by a gray color. Blue veins stood out on his body and he couldn't help but show a painful expression on his face. The hand that was holding the celestial destroying arrow was trembling slightly. Looking down at his chest, Su Yu found a mass of gray air was flowing to his limbs and bones. Is this poison? Su Yu said painfully. However, his eyes were not surprised at all. Instead, he smiled a little bit of relief. He knew he had been poisoned. However, he pretended that he didn't know it and didn't use the Milky Way star sand to detoxify the poison. The only explanation was that he didn't want to detoxify the poison, because the person who poisoned him was willing to die in her hands. The indifferent face of the Central Prefecture's king showed a trace of approval. Then, he said to the person beside him, "Well done." Crack! A strand of space was cracked open. Then, a delicate figure walked out of the crack. She was wearing a colorful dress and was as pretty as a fairy fox. She was so lovely and beautiful. Who else could it be but Qin Xianer? However, compared to yesterday's gentleness, Xianer's expression was cold, and her eyes were dim and empty. Qin Xianer walked out and stood half a step behind the Central Prefecture's king respectfully. Then, she said indifferently, "It's my master's wise plan." The Central Prefecture's king said with a faint smile, "In this world, there are some people who are willing to die in the hands of their loved ones. You are one of them. Being loyal and affectionate is an advantage as well as a fatal weakness of human nature. I took her as my apprentice just in case you use the celestial destroying arrow again." Seeing Su Yu couldn't hold the celestial destroying arrow anymore, the Central Prefecture's king smiled, as if he had everything under his control. He didn't destroy the Zhenlong city because he knew Su Yu would come to this city one day. The reason why he took Qin Xianer as his apprentice was also because he knew Su Yu would kill him willingly even though he knew Qin Xianer was going to kill him. Su Yu was the man who had lost a lot of money to Qin Xianer. As for whether Qin Xianer was willing to be used by Su Yu, the Central Prefecture's king found her and saw the unforgettable hatred in her eyes. He was sure that this girl would become a sharp blade to kill Su Yu. Now, as he expected, as Qin Xianer stared at Su Yu, who was gradually unable to hold on any longer, there was no longing in her eyes. Instead, there was only deep hatred in her eyes. Her expression was ice-cold as she asked, "Do you regret it? Do you want to abandon me and choose Xia Jingyu?" A bit of blood flowed out of Su Yu's mouth. The poison had started to take effect. He knew Qin Xianer had poisoned him when they hugged each other yesterday. Now that he was going to die, why didn't he die in her hands? Maybe Qin Xianer's hatred would be reduced in this way. "I regret it." Su Yu's voice started to tremble because of the poison. However, his tone was quite firm. "I regret that I didn't have the courage to face the two right people at the right time. I also regret that I hurt you and Jingyu." Qin Xianer was not moved by his words. Then, she stepped forward and shouted, "So, do you know you deserve to die?" Su Yu didn't say anything. The poison in his body was the clearest answer. So, he would rather die in Qin Xianer's hands. "Okay, Xianer, take away his celestial destroying arrow and leave the rest to me," the Central Prefecture's king ordered indifferently as if he was staring at a dead body. Before Su Yu died, the Central Prefecture's king didn't dare to touch the celestial destroying arrow. However, the Central Prefecture's king stopped talking suddenly. Then, he turned around and shouted, "What are you doing?" A pitch-black dagger was inserted into his waist. The hand that was holding the dagger was Qin Xianer, his apprentice. Qin Xianer said indifferently, "Of course, I am going to kill you to solve the human tribulation for my brother Su Yu. You betrayed your master." The Central Prefecture's king was annoyed. He didn't expect Qin Xianer would betray him at the last moment. Qin Xianer said calmly, "Like teacher, like disciple. I am learning from my master, right?"